Chapter 1575. It was only after Yi Fei entered that he realized that the valley was actually a smokescreen. What they had truly entered was actually the realm of the fierce winds. This realm was filled with endless formation storms. These storms could blow up mountains and wipe out all living things. If one was not strong or physically strong, just coming into contact with these hurricanes could cause one's entire body to be blown to smithereens by the strong winds. The only way out was likely to be through those huge wind drains. Those wind drains were also the only places where the hurricanes did not blow. It seems like this stage's test is to see if we have the ability to withstand the hurricanes and charge into those wind drains of various sizes. Yi Fei scanned the area with his spiritual perception and discovered countless wind drains in the hurricane. These wind drains varied in size. The larger the wind drains, the more terrifying the surrounding winds. On the other hand, with his strength, he could easily enter some of the smaller wind drains without any effort. However, Yi Fei did not even look at those small wind drains. The moment he discovered these wind drains, he had already locked on to the largest and most imposing wind drains in the depths of the fierce winds. That wind drains must be the key to passing the test. It's very likely that we can only enter the next stage by going through the largest wind drains. If we can't, we can only be eliminated or be forced to enter those smaller wind drains to obtain some consolation rewards. Follow Yi Fei closely. We don't expect to pass this stage, but we must try our best to enter through the largest wind drains. Cultivators who could reach the starry skies were not simple. If Yi Fei could see the trick to these tests, the others could naturally see it as well. Furthermore, one of them was quite clever. He knew that with his strength, it would be difficult for him to walk too far in the fierce winds. He actually chose to hide behind Yi Fei and followed closely behind Yi Fei, walking forward with great difficulty. Yi Fei also looked at this person with admiration. Although this person's strength was not good, he was very smart. If he had a fortuitous encounter, even if he could not break through to Martial Emperor, he would still become a strong quasi-emperor. "What's your name?" Yi Fei asked. "My name is Yang Jie." Yang Jie's expression was somewhat uneasy. After all, he was actually using Yi Fei by doing this. If you want to follow, then follow closely. Be careful not to fall behind. Yi Fei smiled faintly and didn't say much. When one didn't have the strength, it wasn't a bad idea to borrow the strength of others. Of course, he didn't mind Yang Jie doing this. Furthermore, they were all from the Martial Heaven continent. If possible, Yi Fei also hoped that the Martial Heaven continent's martial artists could all become stronger. Yi Fei did not say anything else. However, he slowed down his pace slightly so that the cultivators behind could catch up. Yang Jie and the others had mixed feelings. Compared to Yi Fei's brilliance, they were just insignificant people. Even if Yi Fei abandoned them, they had nothing to complain about. However, Yi Fei did not do that. Instead, he chose to protect them to the best of his ability and lead them further. Is Yi Fei really a demon? Even if he's a demon, Yi Fei is still a good demon. I've decided. Yi Fei will be my idol from now on. Idol, I beg you to walk slower and bring us along. These cultivators actually all lined up in a row and became his followers. Yi Fei's face darkened. He immediately felt that he was reaping what he had sown. Originally, he could walk 3 steps against the wind. Now, he could only walk 2 steps. Fortunately, even if he slowed down, he would only expend a little more vital essence. In any case, he didn't have much. It was just that his vital essence was especially dense. With the dense vital essence of 8 primordial spirits, even those peerless geniuses would be embarrassed. Yi Fei's footsteps became slower and steadier. Very quickly, they lined up in a row and walked a few thousand meters. However, at this point, the pressure of the wind grew stronger. The terrifying wind was enough to blow a martial sage to smithereens on the spot. At this moment, Yi Fei suddenly opened his purple gold taiji. His taiji not only protected himself, but also the surrounding 20 meters. It also happened to protect the cultivators behind him. Don't stop. Continue walking. Yi Fei continued to stride forward. His actions caused Yang Jie and the others to feel a warmth that came from the depths of their hearts. Yifei might not be the strongest among the youths, but he was definitely the most amiable and approachable person they had ever met. Yifei did not know that his unintentional actions had already won the respect of these cultivators. It had also eliminated the last trace of prejudice in their hearts. The surrounding wind blew even more violently. The terrifying wind seemed to blow through the void, and any life that entered the wind would wither away. Bang! At this moment, the purple gold taiji reached its limit and finally shattered. However, at this moment, a blazing demonic golden light suddenly burst out of Yifei's body. This demonic golden light blocked the surrounding strong winds and, intentionally or otherwise, protected the cultivators behind him. The group continued moving forward. Soon, they went from the front of the wind to the middle and finally entered the bottom. They were getting closer and closer to the huge wind gap in front of them. However, when they reached this place, the surrounding wind suddenly increased by dozens of times. It suddenly changed from a terrifying heavenly wind to an even more terrifying one. At this moment, even with the protection of Yifei's war demon golden light, Yang Jie and the others could not withstand it. Yifei suddenly thought of the dragon turtle. This turtle was lazy and gluttonous. It was time to bring it out for a walk. Furthermore, the dragon turtle's shell was extremely hard. If it grew bigger, it could also become a huge turtle shield to protect everyone. They continued walking for a while. At this thought, Yifei's thoughts moved. He had already grabbed the dragon turtle, which was as fat as a ball. The dragon turtle immediately roared aggressively, wanting to show off its domineering side. However, when the dragon turtle saw that the surrounding divine wind was blowing up the entire valley, it was so scared that it immediately retracted its tail. Without another word, it rolled and crawled back into the beast-marked space, refusing to come out even if it was beaten to death. Yifei and Xiao Chao's faces immediately darkened. Yang Jie and the others were also dumbfounded. In the end, Yang Jie was the first to react. He quickly came to his senses and cupped his hands to Yifei. Mo. No, young Master Yi, I'm already very satisfied to be able to make it this far. We can't be a burden to you anymore. Goodbye. As long as I don't die, I'll definitely go to the Tianwu continent to look for you. That's right. Originally, with our strength, we couldn't even make it to the middle section. Now that we've actually made it to the bottom section, what else do we have to be dissatisfied with? Young Master Yi, we'll stop here. We're leaving. However, before we leave, we have to say something. Young Master Yi, you're not only a demon, you're also our idol. Idol, we're leaving. Chapter 1576. Yifei smiled bitterly and shook his head. He continued to move against the wind. At the same time, he no longer needed to protect others. His speed could finally reach its limit. Rumble. The 8 primordial spirits in Yifei's body exploded at the same time. The whistling primordial essence formed a majestic primordial essence current that pushed the surrounding wind to the sides. Yifei continued to move forward. Then, his body exploded with a dense sword light. As Yifei waved his blood sword, a huge taiji sword diagram suddenly appeared in this world of wild winds. It suppressed the void and pushed even more of the wind to the sides. Yifei also took advantage of this opportunity to rush into the largest wind gap. More accurately, the wind gap formed a vortex that swallowed him whole. The light in front of him was a little blurry. Then it became bright. Yifei found himself in a strange hall. This hall was filled with mysterious array inscriptions. In the center of the array inscriptions, there were all sorts of treasures. At this moment, these treasures were floating in front of him. At the same time, a cold voice rang out in the hall. After passing the first stage, you can choose a treasure at random. You have 30 breaths to choose a treasure. If you are late, there will be no more waiting. Yifei was shocked when he heard this. He immediately scanned the large pile of treasures. Among these treasures, there were powerful semi-divine weapons like sabers and swords. There were also supreme elixirs that could extend one's life. There were also all sorts of powerful martial arts, as well as all sorts of elixirs that could raise one's aptitude and domain. Yi Fei even saw an incomplete sword manual. The words Sword Soul were written in ancient seal script. Sword Soul. Could it be that this sword manual records the method to cultivate Sword Soul? Yi Fei's heart shook. He remembered what the sword maniac elder had said before he left. Above the sword aura was the Sword Soul. That was the true meaning of the way of the sword. Unfortunately, the sword maniac elder had left in a hurry. Even now, he still didn't know where the old master was. Without the guidance of this elder, even if Yi Fei knew about the Sword Soul, he wouldn't be able to cultivate it. Yi Fei was a little excited when he discovered this sword manual that recorded the Sword Soul. However, he didn't dare to grab it himself. After all, the treasures were chosen randomly. Furthermore, there was some kind of array formation in this space that would confuse his spiritual consciousness when he grabbed it. Who knew if he would miss this sword manual if he tried to grab it? Considering the bad luck of those who had been abandoned by the heavens, Yi Fei did not dare to try to grab it himself. It's better to let Xiao Qiao do this. Xiao Qiao, come out and do some work. Yi Fei grabbed Xiao Qiao, who was also in the beast mark space and was lazy to do any work. Xiao Qiao was very unhappy. She said that she had already eaten all the spirit stones, but Xiao Qiao was still angry. Yi Fei was speechless when he saw that Xiao Qiao was in a bad mood this time. He hurriedly promised, Xiao Qiao, if you help me grab that sword manual this time, I'll give you all the spirit stones in the future. I won't give them to the dragon turtle. Yi Fei's promise undoubtedly made Xiao Qiao's eyes brighten. She immediately decided to forgive Yi Fei for the time being. She would eat all the spirit stones first. Xiao Qiao blinked her black eyes and stared at the sea of treasures that flowed like a river. Xiao Qiao also quickly discovered the sword manual that Yi Fei wanted. A strange light flashed in her eyes. She actually ignored the hazy light that could block her spiritual consciousness and stretched out her small hand. She didn't grab the sword manual. Instead, she grabbed the shining spirit bead next to the sword manual. Then, as if she was presenting a treasure, she quickly took it out and looked at Yi Fei expectantly. Seeing this scene, Yi Fei almost died of anger. He even had the urge to grab Xiao Qiao and beat her up. How could he forget that Xiao Qiao had no resistance to shiny things? If he had known this would happen, he would have grabbed it himself. But seeing Xiao Qiao holding the spirit bead happily and expectantly, Yi Fei wanted to get angry but couldn't. In the end, he could only hold back his tears and praise Xiao Qiao for being obedient and sensible. He also generously gave the spirit bead to Xiao Qiao. Xiao Qiao's heart was bursting with joy after being coaxed. She hugged the spiritual bead and rolled around on her little immortal crystal bed. Yi Fei looked at the gradually disappearing river of treasures. He wanted to cry, but had no tears. However, that sword manual is incomplete. God knows if I can cultivate it if I really grab it. Yi Fei could only comfort himself like this. Then, the river of treasures in front of him disappeared completely. Suddenly, a large number of figures appeared in front of him. These figures seemed to have appeared out of thin air. Yi Fei, I knew that you would pass the test. Suddenly, Dongfang Yu's excited voice came from afar. Of course, Dongfang Yu's figure also appeared out of thin air. Yi Fei almost jumped in fright. In his heart, he felt even more strongly that the Earth Formation sect was powerful and mysterious. Dongfang Yu, what test did you pass? Why are you in such a sorry state? Yi Fei looked at Dongfang Yu's black face in surprise. Unlucky. I entered a desert. It was very hot and almost roasted me to death. I teamed up with a dozen people. In the end, I was the only one who made it out of the desert. The others gave up halfway. Dongfang Yu said gloomily. Their conversation quickly attracted the attention of others. A genius from a starry sky sect heard this and said disdainfully, a bunch of ignorant fools. The Earth Formation sect's test is ever-changing. Even if you can pass, it's only because you bunch of lowly commoners are lucky. What did you say? Dongfang Yu was angry. He was in a bad mood because he had almost been roasted in the desert. Yi Fei hurriedly pulled him back and said, Dongfang Yu, don't be impulsive. We are gentlemen. Why are you so angry? Boom. Without saying a word, Yi Fei picked up his black sword and smashed it directly at the genius from the Starry Sky sect. The heavy iron sword smashed into the man's face. If it weren't for the protection of the formation, which offset most of the power of the black sword, the man would have been smashed to death on the spot. However, this was not enough to vent his anger. At the thought of losing the sword manual, Yi Fei was very angry. Now that he had a target to vent his anger on, he immediately picked up his black sword and smashed the genius from the Starry Sky sect. Anyway, I can't kill him. One hit is enough. I'll take it as a way to vent my anger. Yi Fei was so angry that he raised his black sword and smashed it like raindrops. Chapter 1577. Stop? Why should I stop? We're gentlemen. We only use our hands, not our mouths. We're all people with poise. Yi Fei spoke eloquently. His black sword became even fiercer. Although he couldn't kill his opponent due to the protection of the formation, Yi Fei still used his black sword to beat this insolent Star Sky genius unconscious. Only then did he resentfully stop. Then, that person's silhouette turned into a ray of light and disappeared from the Array faction's main hall. A cold voice resounded in the air. Even with the protection of the formation, you were still beaten unconscious. Such a loser isn't qualified to take the formation faction's test. Hiss! This cold voice caused the geniuses of the Starry Sky sects to draw in a breath of cold air as they gradually gathered around. They had already tried to kill Yi Fei, but they couldn't kill him in this hall. In fact, under the suppression of the formation, they couldn't even release their domains or martial arts. Clearly, the formation of the formation faction's main hall was to prevent them from using martial arts. At the same time, under the protection of the formation, they shouldn't be able to attack each other. That was why that Star Sky genius had dared to mock Yi Fei so brazenly. How could he have imagined that Yi Fei would use his physical strength to break through the limits of the formation's protection? Although he hadn't killed him on the spot, he had knocked him unconscious. As a result, he had lost the qualifications to take the next test. This was 10 times more savage than killing him. In fact, as soon as that Star Sky genius had been sent out of the formation, he had been wailing and cursing, wishing he could charge in and fight Yi Fei to the death. At this time, Yi Fei didn't know about the peculiarities of the Array faction's main hall, but when he saw the hostility shown towards him by the geniuses of the various Starry Sky sects, and even calling him a lowly person, he couldn't help but get angry. After knocking one person unconscious, he immediately pointed his black sword at the next person and coldly said, "Were you the one who called me a lowly peasant? Oomph. I was the one who called you that. The current Martial Heaven continent has long since declined. I heard that you're so poor that you even have to obtain spirit stones from our Starry Sky sections. How are you any different from lowly commoners now?" The other side wasn't afraid. He was even more dissatisfied with Yi Fei pointing his sword at him. At this time, he strode toward Yi Fei with an arrogant expression and said coldly, "Brat, remember, this is the Starry Sky, not the continent. No matter how strong you are in the Tianwu continent, no matter what status you have in our Starry Sky, you are the lowest of the low." Boom! As he spoke, this person actually reached out to grab Yi Fei's black sword. A strange glint flashed across his eyes. It was obvious that he had already noticed how extraordinary the stellar sword embryo was. Now, he wanted to snatch it from Yi Fei right in front of him. How contemptuous and how confident he was. Yi Fei was shocked, but didn't attack. Instead, he allowed the man to grab his black sword and say, "Who are you? Tell me your name." "Master Blood Spirit from the Blood River sect. This sword is not bad." "I, Master Blood Spirit, want it," shouted Master Blood Spirit. Suddenly, a thunderous roar came from his body. His powerful strength allowed him to break through the limits of the formation. He wanted to snatch Yi Fei's black sword. Go! This scene was very similar to when Yi Fei had snatched the blood sword from Master Blood Sword. Unfortunately, Yi Fei wasn't Master Blood Sword. He hadn't relied on a powerful sect or talent to reach his current level. Instead, he had relied on risking his life in battle. Yi Fei snorted coldly at the same time that Master Blood Spirit unleashed his full power in an attempt to snatch the black sword away from Yi Fei. Although he couldn't use his domain, Yi Fei was like a dragon in human form. Boom! At this moment, Blood Spirit Child's power exploded. He was very confident that as long as it wasn't a peerless genius, he would be able to instantly snatch Yi Fei's black sword and humiliate him. Master Blood Spirit had already decided that he would use the same method to knock Yi Fei unconscious and force Yi Fei to be eliminated by the Array Formation faction. However, while Master Blood Spirit's plan was beautiful, the reality was cruel. He used all his strength to snatch the black sword, but he was shocked to find that no matter how much strength he used, he couldn't move the black sword at all. Yi Fei stood where he was like a towering mountain. Although he seemed powerful, he was actually shocked. Even under the restrictions of the Array sect, Xuelingzi was still able to unleash physical strength that was only slightly weaker than his. This in itself was very terrifying. Who are you? I've heard of all the peerless geniuses of the Tianwu continent, but I don't remember hearing about you. Master Blood Spirit was shocked. Although he knew that Yi Fei had to be very powerful to be able to break through the defenses of the 4 Earth-grade Quasi-Emperors and enter the Earth Array Formation faction, Master Blood Spirit hadn't expected a nobody like Yi Fei to have a stronger physical body than him. It seems like I've met a strong opponent. Master Blood Spirit, are you the peerless genius of the Galaxy sect? Yi Fei asked curiously. He was getting more and more interested in this battle. That's right. Master Blood Spirit is the peerless genius of the Blood River sect. Kid, if you know what's good for you, you'd better kneel down and beg for mercy. Another genius from the Blood River sect said coldly. Blood Spirit Master also spoke in a haughty manner. You're quite powerful, but you're just a brute force. You'll definitely die in the face of peerless prodigies like us. Of course, if you're willing to offer this black sword to me, I can forgive your rudeness to the Starry Sky sect. Rude? Yi Fei suddenly burst into laughter as if he had heard a funny joke. However, his laughter was cold and filled with anger. You Starry Sky sects have taken away our ancient path of stars, killed all the guardians here, and plundered all of us who came here to gain experience. You also want to take over the small worlds on the ancient path of stars, cutting off our powerful opportunities. Who's more rude? Who's the real robber here? Chapter 1578. Of course, Xuelingzi's attack did not contain any martial technique or domain aura due to the interference of the formation. Even so, as a peerless genius, Xuelingzi's blood sword was a semi-divine weapon. His attack was sharp and murderous as it pierced toward Yi Fei. The geniuses from the other sects in the Starry Sky were excited. Haha, that kid is in trouble. How dare he provoke Xuelingzi? Doesn't he know that Xuelingzi hates the people of the Tianwu continent the most? Humph, I'm afraid that he is still living in the Antiquity Age and the Ancient Era. He is still immersed in the glory of his ancestors. He should know who is in charge of the Starry Sky Ancient Road now. Come on, Xuelingzi. Even if you can't kill him, you have to knock him out and make him disqualified from the test. Apparently, these geniuses were more or less Xuelingzi's admirers. From this, one could see just how powerful Xuelingzi was. Dongfang Yu's heart sank. Yi Fei also felt that something was amiss. However, he did not have time to think about it in the face of Xuelingzi's furious attack. An identical blood-colored sword appeared in his hand and clashed with Spirit Blood Master's blood-colored sword, causing another deafening explosion. Even with the protection of the formation, many people's faces changed drastically. They felt as if their eardrums were about to shatter. Blood Spirit Master's expression changed drastically. He asked furiously, "That's a demigod artifact that only the Blood River sect has. How come you have it too? If you want to know, go to hell and ask Xuelingzi yourself." Yi Fei said coldly. A terrifying, murderous intent appeared on his body. After all, the test of the Earth Formation sect was too important to him. It would determine whether he could break through to the Martial Emperor realm or not. He would not allow any accidents to happen, let alone anyone who tried to stop him. From now on, Whoever dares to stop me from passing the test of the Earth Formation sect will be killed. Kill. Yi Fei used the blood sword in his left hand to block the blood sword in Xue Lingzi's right hand. At the same time, the star sword embryo in Yi Fei's right hand smashed forward like a heavy meteorite. The air in the main hall of the Earth Formation sect rumbled, and dense formation runes appeared in the surroundings. If it weren't for the value of these runes, just the weight of the star sword embryo alone would be enough to blow up the space here. The Starry Sky geniuses, who had been cheering for Xue Lingzi a moment ago, widened their eyes in horror. They wondered how heavy the black sword had to be to smash the array patterns of the array sect's main hall. Xue Lingzi's eyes were filled with fear for the first time. He was not afraid of Yi Fei's strength, but of Yi Fei's inconceivable brute force. He was actually able to wield such a heavy stellar sword embryo. Xue Lingzi had thought that his physical strength was comparable to Yi Fei's, even if it was not as strong as his. With the support of the semi-divine weapon, Xue Lingzi was confident that he could defeat Yi Fei. Even if he could not kill Yi Fei, he could at least knock Yi Fei out and disqualify him from the test. However, Yi Fei's display of brute force was simply too terrifying. He was no longer a human, but a humanoid draconic beast. His immense strength and the weight of the black sword not only caused the entire hall to tremble, but also caused Master Blood Spirit's face to turn red as he was forced to retreat. Roar! Xue Lingzi did not want to retreat. He went crazy. He held the blood sword tightly with both hands and attacked Yi Fei with all kinds of exquisite moves. Although these moves did not have any martial power, sometimes exquisite moves could be used against brute force. It was a situation where brute force was broken. You want to compete with me? Ha, great. I've finally met a worthy opponent. Take this, Xue Lingzi. Yi Fei's eyes suddenly became as dazzling as the stars. One had to know that he was a swordsman, even though he wasn't as crazy as Sword Maniac Elder. However, Yi Fei was still passionate about swords and sword moves. When he saw Xue Lingzi's sword moves, Yi Fei felt as if he had met a soulmate. Yi Fei decisively gave up the star sword embryo, which had a great advantage over him. He held the blood sword tightly and performed all kinds of exquisite sword moves with great concentration. Seeing that Yi Fei was courting death by competing with the best swordsman in the universe, not only the geniuses of the Starry Sky sect laughed, but even Xue Lingzi could not help but laugh. You are really stupid. You want to compete with me with your mediocre swordsmanship? Fine, I'll let you see what exquisite swordsmanship looks like before you die. Brilliant sword essence and torrential sword power. Xue Lingzi's swordsmanship was like that of a Jianghu swordsman in the mortal world. All kinds of exquisite swordsmanship poured down like rain. It was like thunder and lightning. Yi Fei suddenly let out a long sigh. You call this swordsmanship? It's an insult to swords. What is a sword? My heart is a sword. My will is a sword. And my soul is a sword. Heaven and earth can be a sword. This is a sword. The sword is the king. It will sweep away all heroes and unify the mountains and rivers. This is the sword of mountains and rivers. Boom! Yi Fei suddenly brandished his sword. His sword was like the collapse of mountains and rivers, like the raging waves of a raging river. The whistling blood-red sword didn't have the slightest bit of martial aura, but it was even more terrifying than when he used martial arts. This is impossible. Blood Spirit Child stared blankly at Yi Fei's sword. He could not believe that Yi Fei was able to display such a terrifying sword intent with the most ordinary sword move. This was no longer at the level of swordsmanship. It was clearly at the level of swordsmanship that he had always dreamed of. Yi Fei's swordsmanship had already become a technique. Xue Lingzi's face turned as red as a pig's liver. He was full of confidence just now. He despised Yi Fei and mocked Yi Fei for overestimating himself. He even wanted to use countless exquisite sword moves to show Yi Fei, a country bumpkin from the mainland, what real swordsmanship was. However, Yi Fei's swordsmanship was like the loudest slap to Xue Lingzi's face. It made him dizzy, and he almost lost his bearings. Although he was a peerless genius and had unparalleled combat strength, he could only retreat in the face of Yi Fei's majestic swordsmanship because he could not use any martial arts. Retreat. Yi Fei suddenly became very dissatisfied with Xue Lingzi's continuous retreat. He shouted angrily, "Why don't you continue to attack? Is this all you've got? I thought you were my soulmate. How ridiculous! How pathetic! My sword is all alone." Yi Fei suddenly felt sad and lonely when he saw Xue Lingzi's flawed swordsmanship. Without Elder Sword Maniac, who else in the world would understand swordsmanship and his swordsmanship? In the end, Yi Fei even forgot that he was still fighting with Xue Lingzi. He let out a sorrowful roar and was completely immersed in his swordsmanship. Sword as vassal, pointing at the mountains and rivers, swallowing the universe, thousands of swords greet me. Yi Fei's swordsmanship suddenly changed from the might of mountains and rivers to the might of a ruler and vassal. The mighty sword light was like heaven and earth, like the sun and the moon. The majestic sword light was awe-inspiring and mighty, shocking Xue Lingzi. Xue Lingzi suddenly began to pant violently. His swordsmanship suddenly became sluggish under Yi Fei's mighty sword light. His conviction was almost completely shattered by this sword light. This was not the end. Following that, Yi Fei let out a loud roar and unleashed his third sword strike. His voice became impassioned, like a veteran general on the battlefield. His blood sword clanged as he said, "The sword is the general. I must lay down my head and spill my blood. The general has fought 100 battles and is unafraid of death." Chapter 1579. I use the sword. I don't understand the sword. Haha. I, Blood Spirit, call myself the #1 genius of the sword Tao in the starry sky, but I can't even compare to a commoner from the continent. Haha. Blood Spirit was laughing, but it was a bitter laugh. His face was filled with grief, anger, unwillingness, and humiliation. He admitted that he couldn't compare to Yi Fei in terms of brute force, but he couldn't compare to Yi Fei in terms of the sword. That was a heavy blow to him. This was the effect Yi Fei wanted. Either they didn't compete in the sword, or they had to make his opponent lose wholeheartedly. Not long ago, when he had faced the sword maniac elder, he had also been beaten like this. He had been beaten so badly that he had begun to doubt himself. In the end, although he had been lucky enough to defeat the sword maniac elder that had just been on the surface, the sword maniac elder had intentionally let him win. In terms of the true sword, I can't compare to the old Master Jian, and Blood Spirit can't compare to me. So let's sink into despair and doubt. I've experienced this before, so I understand. Although Yi Fei sympathized with Blood Spirit, he wouldn't show mercy. The only thing he regretted was that he could only injure people in the formation sect's main hall, not kill them. Since he couldn't kill his opponent, the best choice was to crush his opponent's confidence and make him unable to recover. It would be even better if we could use this chance to destroy this peerless genius of the starry sky. That way, the martial heaven continent would have one less enemy, muttered Yi Fei greedily. Dongfang Yu happened to hear Yi Fei's words. When he saw Xue Lingzi sitting on the ground in a daze, Dongfang Yu felt a chill down his spine. Even a peerless genius is defeated by you. His confidence has collapsed. Yi Fei, I realize that it's not right to be friends with you. It's often dangerous because you're too perverted and too good at scheming. Yi Fei had a simple and honest look on his face. He flatly denied, Dongfang Yu, you're slandering me. In fact, I'm an honest man. I'm not abnormal at all. In fact, my sword skills are second in the world at best. You can't surpass me in swordsmanship. But in terms of fists, you're better than me. If you try harder, you might be able to catch up with me. Dongfang Yu looked at Yi Fei gloomily and said seriously, Yi Fei, if you comfort people like this, you'll be beaten to death sooner or later. Yi Fei blinked his eyes and looked at Dongfang Yu innocently, looking honest and honest. However, his behavior made many geniuses of the Starry Sky sects gnash their teeth in hatred. Was it easy for a Starry Sky sect to produce a peerless genius? It could be said that Xue Lingzi not only carried the hopes of the Blood River sect, but also of many other sects in the universe. However, Yifei had only used 3 moves to defeat Lingzi, who collapsed to the ground as if he had lost his mind. If the Blood Spirit Master was destroyed because of this, Yifei would be the entire Starry Sky, the person the sect hated the most. Unfortunately, despite their hatred, none of them dared to speak rudely to Yifei or the Tianwu continent after seeing Lingzi's miserable appearance. Many people lowered their heads and stood far away. They were silent and patient. Yifei and Dongfang didn't say anything. The two of them found a corner and sat down cross-legged, cultivating while waiting. While they were cultivating, 1 or 2 geniuses passed the test and entered the formation faction's main hall. Yifei's expression gradually became serious. Dongfang, have you noticed? Asked Yifei suddenly. I've noticed. Aside from you and me, the others who passed are all from the Starry Sky sections. It's strange. Before I came here, I heard that peerless geniuses like Shui Yu and the white-clothed war god Difan had all come to this world. Why aren't they here? Dongfang Yu opened his eyes. His heart was heavy. Yifei stood up and walked towards a gray-robed youth among the crowd of Starry Sky sects, saying, "We can't wait any longer. Since we don't understand, we could just find someone to ask. Brother, I have a few questions to ask." "Go away. I don't have time," said the youth impatiently. However, he didn't finish his sentence. Boom! A heavy black sword smashed into the entire hall, causing the formation runes to tremble violently. The youth's dissatisfaction vanished in fright. Only now did he remember that although it was impossible to kill in the formation faction's main hall, Yifei could easily knock him out and force him to disqualify. He also didn't have the same ability as the Blood Spirit Master, who had been defeated by Yifei without retreating. What do you want? I've never offended you." The youth's attitude softened. He didn't dare look at the disdain and anger in the eyes of the others. "I just want to ask a few questions. Don't worry, I won't force you." Yifei truly didn't force him to speak. He just slowly waved his black sword. "I'll ask, and you'll answer. Let me ask you, have the Martial Heaven Continent's peerless geniuses entered? Where are they now?" The gray-robed youth gulped. "Young Master Yi, you're too late. The Martial Heaven Continent's young experts have long since entered the second trial." "What? The second stage of the examination has already begun? Then why are you all waiting here?" Yifei asked in shock. The gray-robed youth said indignantly, "We also want to go in, but this formation sect's formation spirit is too deceitful. It says the Martial Heaven Continent's first batch is the second batch of our Starry Sky sections. Otherwise, we wouldn't be so angry at you." Only now did Yifei understand. It was no wonder even a peerless genius like Lingzi could only wait here. After all this time, although the formation faction's formation spirit seemed cold and emotionless, it was actually still on the Martial Heaven Continent side. It was no wonder these geniuses were so angry at them. The second question is, how much longer will it take for our group to enter the second trial? Yifei continued asking. His black sword casually rested on the gray-robed youth's neck. "Don't worry. Tell me everything you know. I won't force you." The gray-robed young man was on the verge of tears. He could only reply honestly. To enter the second stage, there must be 50 people in the Array faction's Great Hall who have passed the first stage. Now, including you, we have 49 people. Only one more is left. "All right, brother. Many thanks. I'll treat you to a drink some other time." Yifei walked away satisfied. "There's no need to thank me. Don't come looking for me." The gray-robed youth hastily slipped into the crowd, afraid that Yifei would catch him again. Chapter 1580. Don't worry, I'm here. I'm the second swordsman in the world. I've defeated Lingzi, so why should I be afraid of others? Yifei said, looking invincible. Dongfang Yu was still pessimistic. He suddenly said, "Are you sure you can defeat a peerless genius like Lingzi if you can use your martial techniques and domain techniques in the second stage?" Yifei's face darkened. However, Yifei said in a low voice, "Since I can defeat him in sword principle and strength, I can also defeat him in other aspects. Dongfang Yu, you have to have confidence in me. After hearing what you said, I suddenly lost all confidence in you." Dongfang Yu shook his head with a bitter smile. Yi Fei's face darkened even more. However, he was still worried. After all, even if he could defeat Shuai Lingzi in sword principle, he might not be able to defeat Shuai Lingzi in martial techniques and domain techniques. While he was talking Dongfang Yu, Shuai Lingzi, who was sitting on the ground, suddenly stood up. Although Spirit Blood Master's hair was disheveled and his eyes were bloodshot, the negative emotions that had been lingering around him had already disappeared. His body once again became perfectly straight, like a sword covered in dust. At this moment, it once again revealed the sharpness it should have. Yi Fei was shocked. So fast. You've recovered from the blow just now? Yi Fei, I admit that you have won this time. You almost destroyed my confidence with your sword. Unfortunately, you have underestimated us peerless geniuses. I admit that I'm not as good as you in terms of sword Dao, but so what? Martial arts and domains are the most important things for us martial artists. Shuai Lingzi smiled bitterly and looked at Yi Fei with hatred. Yi Fei, I admit that you have won this time. You almost destroyed my confidence with your sword. Why'd I need to use my weaknesses? Compared to your strengths, I only need to play to my strengths and avoid my weaknesses. How many moves can you take from me? 3 moves? 2 moves? How many moves can you take from me? No, I only need 1 move to defeat you. I only need 2 moves to kill you. Just you wait. I won't be able to unleash my full power this time, but once we get to the second stage, I'll show you how terrifying a consummate genius can be. Ha ha! Master Blood Spirit laughed heartily, his heart filled with joy. The last bit of gloominess seemed to have dissipated along with the laughter. Yi Fei looked coldly at Shuai Lingzi, then suddenly laughed and said, Shuai Lingzi, I'll ask you one last time. Do you dare to use your sword against me the next time we fight? Blood Spirit Master's laughter came to an abrupt halt. Even his smile froze on his face. Yi Fei's words made Blood Spirit Master feel as though a fly was stuck in his throat. Go ahead and talk your way out. Master Blood Spirit harumphed coldly before he turned around and left. However, the aura that he had just regained was inevitably weakened. Dongfang Yu also glanced at Yi Fei in admiration. Brother Yi, you are still so calm in the face of a peerless genius. Do you have any secret techniques to win? Let's wait and see. If Shuai Lingzi wants to kill me, he will definitely be badly injured. Yi Fei snorted coldly, but he did not explain further. He did not want to reveal his trump card too early. However, Shuai Lingzi's recovery made Yi Fei's heart sink. He remembered that Lu Qing had said that peerless geniuses were different from other martialists. Ordinary martialists would find it difficult to get back up after falling, but peerless geniuses could get back up quickly and continue fighting. In the past, Yi Fei had thought that Lu Qing was bragging about her talent. However, after watching Shuai Lingzi, Yi Fei had indeed seen the terrifying talent of a peerless genius. However, this could not be helped. Anyone who could become a peerless genius had a deep foundation that could support them despite repeated setbacks. However, it was different for other martialists. Even a top genius would be ruined after a few defeats. They might even lose their lives. I don't have their foundation. I'm not a top genius, and I'm not a peerless genius. I'm just an ordinary martialist with despair energy. I can't afford to lose like them. No matter what, I don't want to lose. I want to be invincible. I'm invincible, so I won't lose. Boom. Yi Fei was not frightened by Shuai Lingzi's recovery. On the contrary, Shuai Lingzi's recovery made Yi Fei's fighting spirit even stronger. However, he did not look for trouble with Shuai Lingzi. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and waited patiently for a day. Finally, the last figure appeared in the main hall of the erased sect. Dongfang Yu's expression became ugly. It's someone from the Starry Sky sects again. Other than you and me, over 100 martialists of the Tianwu continent have failed. There's nothing we can do about it. Compared to the Starry Sky sects, the martialists of the Tianwu continent are still too weak. However, we have more peerless geniuses than the Starry Sky sections. We definitely won't lose out in this trial. Yi Fei shook his head. He was still full of confidence. Dongfang Yu was speechless. I really don't know where your confidence comes from, right? Is there something strange about that person? Why do you keep staring at him? It's nothing. It's just that the last person to come in looks a little familiar. Yi Fei couldn't understand. That person was clearly a genius from the Starry Sky sections. He had never seen him before. Why did he feel that he looked familiar? It seemed that he was overthinking things. Rumble. As the 50th person entered the main hall, the formation of the array sect changed. The array spirit's cold voice rang out once more. The second trial has been completed. Now, the second trial of the protectors will begin. You can enter the formation door in order. Then, a 5-colored array formation light door appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Many of the Starry Sky geniuses impatiently charged in. Shui Lingzi didn't charge in. Instead, he waited until Yi Fei entered the formation door before saying coldly, "Once you pass through this door, you'll definitely die at my hands. If you don't want to die, tell me how to break through your sword technique." Yi Fei glanced at Shui Lingzi disdainfully. "Sorry, I only passed this sword technique to my son. If you want to learn it, you'll have to take my surname." "Good, very good, very good. You'd better not meet me in the second trial. Otherwise, I'll make you kneel and call me grandfather." Chapter 1581. Inside the array gate was a strange land. There were no warriors on this land, only the most ordinary people. At this moment, all the martialists that had entered this land. Yi Fei immediately tried to sense his own domain. What shocked him was that his domain was indeed able to sense. He could even use his martial techniques. "We are doomed. Dongfang, you look grave. Even if we are doomed, killing one is enough. Killing two is a gain." Yi Fei was not particularly worried. He had the bloodline armor. Even if he could not defeat Shui Lingzi could not do anything to him. Boom! Realizing that they could use martial arts techniques, the warriors from the Starry Sky sects were all filled with killing intent. Shui Lingzi's eyes turned red. "You defeated me in the array gate hall. Now, it's time for me to defeat you. I will let you know that offending a peerless genius like me is the biggest mistake of your life." "Wrong." "Really? You dare to use your sword in front of me?" Yi Fei said coldly. He was ready to fight with Dongfang Yu. Roar! Suddenly, a huge and strange beast roar came from the valley in the distance. Then a lot of crying and screaming came from the valley. A wild beast is attacking the human tribe. "Shui Lingzi, the test has begun." A genius from the Starry Sky sect shouted. They had fought with wild beasts all year round, so they were very familiar with their roars. Shui Lingzi's face changed, but he quickly restrained his killing intent toward Yi Fei. He said in a low voice, "It's more important to pass the test. You guys block them. Kill anyone who dares to come close." Several geniuses from the Blood River sect immediately stared coldly at Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu. Shui Lingzi hurriedly led the others into the valley. Yi Fei was furious. He knew that Shui Lingzi was using this method to stop him from passing the test. However, he did not attack immediately. Dongfang Yu also sent a voice transmission to him. "Yi Fei, something is wrong. We don't know what the second test is. Don't act rashly. Fight with someone." Yi Fei nodded. He thought that Dongfang Yu's words made sense. If this stage prohibited them from fighting among themselves, it would be too unfair if they lost the qualification to take the test. However, Shui Lingzi is underestimating me if he thinks he can trap me with so few people. "Dongfang Yu, let's go." Hearing the screams and cries for help coming from the valley, Yi Fei suddenly grabbed Dongfang Yu's shoulder and executed the Great Void technique before the geniuses of the Blood River sect could surround them. Boom! Yi Fei immediately charged into the void. At the same time, he increased his speed to the maximum. In a single breath, he covered a terrifying distance of 500 to 600 miles. Shui Lingzi had been ahead of him. If nothing unexpected happened, Shui Lingzi would have arrived first with the geniuses of the Starry Sky sect. Even if Yi Fei arrived, he would be blocked by the geniuses of the Blood River sect and fall behind by a long distance. Unfortunately, Shui Lingzi did not expect that Yi Fei had mastered the Great Void technique. Faced with such an arcane celestial skill that could increase speed, Xuelingzi could only watch Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu break through the limit and rush into the valley where the wild beasts were wreaking havoc. Puff! Xuelingzi was so angry that he spat out blood. He wished he could drag Yi Fei out and beat him to death. The other geniuses of the Starry Sky sect were also furious. They roared even more furiously than the wild beasts. Many of them even burned their blood vessels to increase their speed and rushed into the valley. However, they were too late. When they rushed into the valley, Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu were already fighting with the wild beasts that were wreaking havoc in the valley. These wild beasts were huge. Some of them could breathe fire, some could release ice arrows, thunderbolts, earth, rocks, and even mucus. The most frightening thing about these wild beasts was that their defense was very strong. It was difficult for anyone below the Half-Emperor realm to break through their defense. No wonder they are wild beasts that can survive in the Starry Sky. If they continue to wreak havoc, all the mortals living in this valley will be killed. Dongfang Yu, take my sword. Let's end this quickly. Yi Fei took out the blood sword and the star sword embryo. He threw the blood sword to Dongfang Yu to increase his attack power. The heavy black sword was in Yi Fei's hand. He smashed forward like a storm. The sky of the valley was constantly exploding and collapsing. The corpses of the wild beasts were smashed to death by Yi Fei's black sword and fell from the sky like rain. When this scene landed in the eyes of the tribesmen, Yi Fei was like a god descending from the heavens, slaughtering everything in his path and protecting them. Heavenly gods, they are heavenly gods. Our prayers are working. A god has come to save us. Countless tribesmen prostrated themselves on the ground and prayed even more devoutly. Their prayers even formed faith and surged toward Yi Fei. Puff! Xuelingzi, who had rushed in, was so angry that he spat out blood again. If he had been the first to arrive, he would have done better than Yi Fei. Unfortunately, it was too late to say anything now. Xuelingzi and the other Starry Sky geniuses could only roar angrily and rush into the sky to kill the wild beasts in the valley. The wild beasts. After all, those who had successfully entered this level were all geniuses among geniuses. No one was a fool. At this moment, everyone understood that the test of this level was to kill the wild beasts and protect the mortals. Moreover, the more they killed and the harder they worked, the more grateful they would be to the mortals. Naturally, it was the humans. Everyone was fighting to be the first. This was especially so for Xuelingzi. He was the third to rush in and immediately unleashed the terrifying combat power of a peerless genius. Streaks of blood chi formed a roaring blood sea and blood mountain. In order to compete with Yi Fei, Xuelingzi even unleashed the power of his bloodline. Soon, a black demon god with a solemn expression appeared behind him. The demon god held a giant sword in his hand, and the roaring sword chi cut the wild beasts around him into pieces. Xuelingzi's hard work earned him the gratitude of many tribesmen. A large mass of faith light surged toward Xuelingzi's body. It's the bloodline of a demon god. Yi Fei also noticed Xuelingzi's strange phenomenon and was a little surprised. He did not expect to meet someone who also had the bloodline of a demon god. Roar! As a large number of Starry Sky geniuses joined the battle, the hundreds of wild beasts in the valley were all killed within an hour. Chapter 1582. Yi Fei, I've tolerated you for a long time. Do you dare to fight me to the death? Xuelingzi was smart. He did not take the initiative to attack, but chose to challenge Yi Fei in public. At the same time, he was testing the limits of the second test. In fact, although they had killed all the wild beasts, they did not receive any notification that they had passed the test. This meant that killing the wild beasts was probably only the first step of the test. As for the second step, no one knew. However, after seeing the desolate beasts wreaking havoc in the destroyed tribal villages, as well as the villagers who were fortunate enough to survive, Yi Fei couldn't help but sigh in his heart. He thought of the time when he was still in Blackrock City. Back then, vicious beasts and demonic beasts often came out of the Blackrock Mountains to hurt people. It was common for them to destroy villages and villages. Thinking of this, Yifei was no longer in the mood to fight with Xuelingzi. If you're not afraid of failing the test, feel free to attack us. After saying this, Yifei landed on the ground and walked towards the half-destroyed village. He was greeted by the respectful gazes of countless villagers. There was also a white-haired elder who hugged the only valuable beast hides in the tribe. He knelt down respectfully and kowtowed. The elder has a spirit. Thank you for descending upon us and saving us. Our village is poor, and we have nothing to repay you with. These desolate beast hides are our most precious treasures. We hope to offer them to the heavenly gods. We wish to offer them to you to fulfill our wish. Yifei was shocked. He hurried over and helped them up. Elders, you've misunderstood. We're not gods. Like you, we're humans. If you don't mind, you can call us protectors. In the end, Yifei could not help but test the waters. The old men's eyes suddenly lit up. They stood up excitedly and said in surprise, "Our human race can also become so powerful? That's great. There's hope for us humans. With you protectors, we finally have a chance to live. Everyone, don't worry. From today onwards, the Starry Sky sect will protect this valley. We'll also ensure that your tribes can live peacefully." Xuelingzi also landed from the sky. He was elegant and refined, and he began to try his best to win the hearts of the villagers. Seeing Yifei and Blood Spirit Child's actions, the others finally came to their senses. No one really thought of themselves as high and mighty heavenly gods. They all landed on the ground and began to get closer to the villagers. The entire village instantly became lively, due to the timely arrival of Yifei and the others. Although many villages were destroyed, none of the villagers died. The entire tribe and more than a dozen villages were in a state of revelry. As the representatives of the heavenly gods, Yifei and Xuelingzi were invited to the main seats by the villagers to accept their thanks. However, Yifei and Master Blood Spirit's expressions were extremely unsightly. "Even if I let you enter the valley first, you will still be no match for me in the end," Xuelingzi said sarcastically. "Second brother, you can't say that. At the very least, I have killed a few more desolate beasts than you." Yifei's smile was simple and honest. However, Spirit Bloodmaster's face turned red with anger when he heard those words. However, Spirit Bloodmaster quickly smiled again. "Yifei, if you think that you can anger me, you are wrong. Just you wait. I will soon take everything away from you. No matter what this test is, I will surpass you in the end." Spirit Bloodmaster snorted coldly and returned to his team. No one knew what they were discussing. Yifei also snorted coldly. He knew that the two sides were now at each other's throats. Although I don't know when the second test will end, the most important thing now is to win the hearts of the people and try to help Spirit Bloodmaster gain a foothold in the tribe. Early the next morning, after a night of revelry, the villagers were busy rebuilding their homes that had been destroyed by the wild beasts. Xuelingzi led a group of geniuses from the Starry Sky sects to work quickly. They targeted the injured villagers and performed various powerful martial arts to help them recover from their injuries. They also took out many treasures. They also offered high-quality pills and treasures to attract the villagers. Yifei was also angry at Spirit Bloodmaster's obvious attempt to poach the villagers, but he did not argue with Spirit Bloodmaster. He had lived in the mountains since he was a child and naturally knew what the villagers should do after the disaster. He discussed with Dongfang Yu for a while and then found several respected elders in the village. They began to organize strong young people to carry soil and stones, teach them how to build strong walls and sharp weapons, and strengthen the tribe's defense as much as possible. Occasionally, Yifei would help the villagers carry water and firewood and do some farm work. Often, a large group of children would surround Yifei and ask him all kinds of questions, looking forward to the outside world. Dongfang Yu taught the people in the village who were interested in martial arts. He taught them all kinds of basic martial arts so that they could have the ability to defend themselves. He attracted the attention of countless young women. Every day, they could not take their eyes off Dongfang Yu's shirtless figure. But from then on, Dongfang Yu no longer dared to go bare-chested. Yifei gradually gained the support of a large number of villagers. However, Most of the villagers who gathered around him were the elderly, women, and children, as well as some simple and honest young people. Most of the young and strong people were attracted by the treasures and elixirs and gathered around Schwellingzi. Gradually, the tribe was divided into two groups. Spirit Blood Master's group used a large number of pills to forcibly improve the physique of the villagers who joined them, making them very strong in a short time. Yi Fei's group mainly taught the villagers how to cultivate so that they could become strong through their own efforts. Soon, a year had passed. The entire tribe had been fortified by Yi Fei and Spirit Blood Master respectively. In terms of battle prowess, the cultivators that Blood Spirit Master had cultivated with spirit herbs were stronger. However, in terms of defense, the walls that Yi Fei and the villagers had built were more than enough for everyone to protect themselves. Gradually, a terrible wind began to blow in the tribe. Dongfang Yu stood beside Yi Fei and said with a serious expression, "It's coming. I heard from the women that once the wind blows in the valley, a large number of wild beasts will attack the tribe." Yi Fei looked at Dongfang Yu strangely and nodded. "The real test is about to begin. Dongfang Yu, you're more popular with women. Go and organize everyone to hide in the anti-beast cave. Don't let them out without our permission. Why don't you go?" Dongfang Yu was very unhappy. His face darkened at the thought of facing those young ladies again. Chapter 1583. Schwellingzi, what should we do? This test seems to be more difficult than we expected. Given the villagers' current strength, they can't even fend off ordinary vicious beasts, let alone wild beasts. Humph! What a bunch of lowly villagers. We wasted so much time on them by giving them so many elixirs. Why don't we ignore the villagers? Anyway, the purpose of this round is to fight against the wild beasts. With so many geniuses joining forces, we can definitely kill a large number of wild beasts. The wild beast's intelligence is not inferior to ours. If we suffer too many casualties, they will retreat. Another Starry Sky genius spoke up. His words received the approval of many. Master Blood Spirit sneered and glared at the man. "Idiot! If the Guardian's test is that simple, then not everyone can become a Guardian. What if I protect these villagers from death? That's the only way to pass the test. Conditions? What should we do?" "Schwellingzi, you mean the 10 weakest geniuses will stay with the villagers. The rest of you, follow me and kill all the wild beasts. The more, the better." Schwellingzi's eyes flashed fiercely. The 10 weakest Starry Sky geniuses' faces darkened. Everyone could see that the more wild beasts they killed, the higher their chances of passing the test. Schwellingzi had obviously cut off their chances of passing the test by leaving them here. However, no one dared to express their dissatisfaction or sympathy. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your bad luck. Who asked you to be so weak? The other Starry Sky geniuses rubbed their palms and took the initiative to attack as soon as they saw the wild beasts coming. Yi Fei, Schwellingzi, and the others are taking the initiative to attack. Dongfang Yu's face changed. Yi Fei also looked grave. Apparently, he had also seen through Schwellingzi's plan. He suddenly felt anxious. After all, they had too few people on their side. "Yi Fei, if you don't fight, I will stay behind." Dongfang Yu gritted his teeth. "Dongfang Yu, I will remember this favor." Yi Fei felt a little sad. Now, everyone could see that the more wild beasts one killed, the higher the chance of passing the stage. Dongfang Yu's decision to stay was no different from giving up on this stage. However, Yi Fei could not reject Dongfang Yu's good intentions. After all, the Earth Formation Sex test would determine whether or not he could break through to the Martial Emperor realm. No matter what, he could not give up. Seeing Yi Fei's hesitation, Dongfang Yu said with a carefree smile, "Don't say that if you're my friend. I think that protecting these villagers is also a part of the test. It's not a bad thing for us to attack and defend." Yi Fei nodded in agreement. What Dongfang Yu said made sense. Otherwise, the Blood Spirit Master would have left behind 10 geniuses to protect the villagers. Protect them well. Yi Fei took a deep look at the surrounding villagers. Although he knew that they were just illusions of the formation and were not real life, Yi Fei had treated them as real people after living with them for a year. Don't worry, there are many of them. They are all my disciples. I care more about their safety than you do. Everyone, follow me. Dongfang led a few of his new disciples and began to organize the surrounding villagers to retreat into the anti-wild beast cave that had been dug in advance. Yi Fei also wielded his black sword. With his fastest speed, he charged towards the large number of desolate beasts that were charging from afar. Even with the speed of the Great Void technique, Yi Fei was able to reach them first. He rushed into the beast horde and was the first to kill the desolate beasts in the front row. Follow me. Blood Spirit Master was so angry that his eyes turned red. He hurriedly unleashed his strongest power. Streaks of blood-red radiance were like sharp swords that cut through mountains, killing all the wild beasts that came near. The other Starry Sky geniuses were also ruthless. They targeted the wild beasts around them and killed them mercilessly. At this point, even a fool knew that killing these wild beasts was the key to passing the stage. Naturally, they were all fighting with all their might. However, no matter how fast they killed the wild beasts, they were not as fast as Yi Fei and Blood Spirit Master. Blood Spirit Master was a peerless genius. His attacks were so terrifying that even an Earth-level Quasi-Emperor could be killed instantly. Although Yi Fei's martial arts were not as sharp as Blood Spirit Master's, his black sword was heavy and hard enough to make the sky explode. No matter how strong the defense of these wild beasts was, they could not withstand it. They could withstand the power of the black sword. If this continued, Yi Fei and Blood Spirit Master would be able to pass the stage smoothly. However, would the test of the Earth Formation sect be so simple? On the battlefield in front, Yi Fei and Blood Spirit Master were fighting fiercely. In the tribe behind them, countless wild beasts appeared out of thin air. These wild beasts were able to hide from everyone's divine consciousness and came out of the void. Gosh, they are man-eating void beasts. The villagers on Blood Spirit Master's side were the first to be attacked by the void beasts. After a year of hard work, many of them had broken through to the Martial Master and even the Martial Grandmaster level. Unfortunately, they were facing void beasts that were generally at the Half-Emperor realm. These wild beasts only needed to breathe a mouthful of air to kill and injure the villagers, who had become martial artists less than a year ago, and they fled in fear. On the other hand, the villagers on Yi Fei's side had already gone into hiding because of Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu's arrangements. Even if one or two void beasts appeared occasionally, Dongfang Yu would quickly kill them with his blood sword. At the same time, there were a few disciples in the tribe who were carefully taught by Dongfang Yu to maintain order. Therefore, although many elders and children were scared out of their wits, they did not panic. They were orderly and orderly. Using the fortifications that Yi Fei had set up in advance, they retreated step by step. It was even more miraculous. However, there were no casualties. This scene was naturally seen by the Starry Sky geniuses who stayed behind. Many of them were filled with regret. Damn it! If we had known that these villagers would be so useless in the face of the void beasts, we would not have spent so much effort to improve their strength. We would have prepared more fortifications. It's too late to say this now. Before all the villagers die, let's form a 10-man battle formation and protect the villagers who are still alive. No, we don't have 10 men. Who the hell ran away at this time? Not to mention the battle formation, there were more. When these Starry Sky geniuses were about to join forces, they were shocked to find that there were only 9 of them left. The remaining one actually took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention and ran off somewhere. Chapter 1584. However, this struggle did not last long. Yi Fei decided that he had to save these villagers. Putting aside the fact that these villagers might have something to do with the trial this time, just based on our friendship over the past year, I can't just stand by and watch them die. Charge back. The black sword in Yi Fei's hand shone brightly. At this moment, Yi Fei ignited his bloodline and activated the unique starlight of the Starry Sword embryo. Under this light, the dozens of wild beasts attacking him were all sliced into pieces. Then, without waiting for the vicious beasts to surround him, Yi Fei roared again. He tore open the void with his bare hands and used the great void step to return to the village as quickly as possible. Roar! 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 The deafening roars of the wild beasts could be heard everywhere in the village. There were also the cries of the villagers. In just a short while, more than 100 villagers had died in the mouths of the wild beasts. What made Yi Fei feel relieved was that the villagers who had died were all from Xuelingzi's side. Although the villagers under Feng Yu's protection had been pushed back by the defensive fortifications that everyone had built in advance, no one had died yet. Even so, when he saw the desolate beasts wreaking havoc and the tragic deaths of the villagers, Yi Fei felt a sharp pain in his heart. Even though he knew that these villagers were formed by an array formation, they had still lived in this tribe for a year. Humans were not plants. How could they be emotionless? When Yi Fei looked at the desolate beasts again, there was a shocking anger and killing intent emanating from his body. Kill! Yi Fei raised his black sword and instantly charged into the midst of these rampaging wild beasts. His black sword had already turned red, and his entire body was stained with blood. However, Yi Fei's footsteps did not stop, nor did his black sword. All of you deserve to die. At the same time that Yi Fei returned to the tribe, Xuelingzi had also returned with a large group of geniuses from the various Starry Sky sections. However, what they saw when they returned was a tragic scene. 70% of the villagers they had been protecting had died. The remaining 30% could only be found among the 9 Starry Sky geniuses. Under his protection, he was struggling to hold on. Blood Spirit Master was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. If Yi Fei could discover the importance of these villagers, so could Blood Spirit Master. However, he had not expected that something like this would happen, even though he had left 10 people behind to guard the village. Maybe this was done deliberately by the Array Spirit. If not, there is no desolate beast that can hide from our spiritual senses and sneak attack the villagers here. Some Starry Sky geniuses roared angrily. They were fighting a bloody battle at the front, but in the end, their backyard was on fire. This made them very unhappy. Of course, they were just annoyed. None of the Starry Sky geniuses took the lives of the villagers seriously. They were just worried that such a large number of casualties would affect their test. On the other hand, although the villagers in Yi Fei were also terrified, they were able to create a miracle thanks to the large number of fortifications. Miraculously, no one died. This aroused the intense jealousy of even more Starry Sky geniuses. A Starry Sky elite even told the Blood Spirit Master bluntly, "Blood Spirit Master, we can't hesitate anymore. We have suffered heavy casualties, while Yi Fei's side is still alive. If this continues, it will be very disadvantageous for us. Damn it, damn it. If I don't have it easy, Yi Fei won't have it easy either. At worst, everyone will fail the test. Everyone, retreat with me. Let's let these desolate beasts rush into the village." The look in the Blood Spirit Master's eyes became extremely vicious. Then, the Blood Spirit Master explained to the Starry Sky geniuses who did not understand, "This is the best way for us to turn the tables. Since we have suffered heavy casualties, we might as well kill all the villagers in Yi Fei's side. This way, not only will we be able to turn the tables, but we might even have a certain advantage. This is a good idea. Xuelingzi, that's a good idea. If it works, Yi Fei's villagers will all die. He won't be able to pass the test, no matter how many beasts he kills." All the Starry Sky geniuses' eyes lit up. As for whether the old, weak, women, and children in Yi Fei's side would all die because of this, no one cared. After all, in the eyes of the Starry Sky geniuses, the villagers were all fake lives. Since they were fake to begin with, it did not matter how many of them died. As long as they did their best to protect the remaining villagers and kill as many desolate beasts as possible, the final victory would belong to them. Ha ha! Listen to my orders. Take all the surviving villagers and retreat from this valley. The Blood Spirit Master's face was cold. Then he used his true origin giant hand to grab a dozen frightened villagers on the ground. They avoided the desolate beasts and rushed out of the valley, as fast as they could. The other starry sky geniuses followed suit. They grabbed some of the villagers and evacuated as fast as they could. Roar! Roar! Without the starry sky geniuses' obstruction, a large number of desolate beasts rushed into the valley without any hindrance. The villages were destroyed as a result. The elderly and children died tragically in the mouths of the desolate beasts. Blood Spirit Master, you despicable man, do you have any humanity left? Are you even human? Dongfang was furious. His eyes were red. Seeing so many familiar faces die like this made him want to go crazy. At this moment, a large hand pressed on Dongfang Yu's shoulder. It was Yi Fei's hand. After waving his black sword hundreds of times, his hands were trembling. His strength had reached its limit, but he still could not stop the desolate beasts from wreaking havoc. Yi Fei's heart sank when he saw the people he knew lying in a pool of blood one after another. Then, a raging fury started to burn in his body. There's no need to be angry over those people. If we have the strength, we might as well kill a few more desolate beasts and protect the innocent villagers. Yes, we must protect them well. Tears flowed down Dongfang Yu's face, which caused his fist aura to form a sorrowful intent realm. This intent realm caused Dongfang Yu's martial arts to move from fist technique to fist technique. Unfortunately, Yi Fei could not say anything to congratulate him. His heart was heavy, and his whole body was filled with endless killing intent. The heavy star sword embryo carried this killing intent and anger as it charged into the area with the most desolate beasts. Uncle Yi, Lord Guardian. Chapter 1585. Feudal? Upon hearing Xuelingzi's words, Yi Fei laughed. His laughter was bitter but calm. Indeed, his and Dongfang Yu's actions were foolish. They knew that the villagers were just illusions of the array. The most rational thing they could do now was to capture some of the wild beasts before all of them rushed in. As for the rest, they didn't need to care about them. They didn't need to worry about their lives. It's a pity that I can't do that. After all, we have lived together for a year. I can't let go of this relationship. Yi Fei said in a low voice. I can't do it either. Xiao Chui from the neighboring village came to watch me practice every day. She said that she secretly liked me, but just now, she died in front of me. She and her 80-year-old grandmother died in front of me. Dongfang Yu's voice was filled with sorrow. Then, he charged forward. He punched out a ray of fist radiance. The ray of fist radiance created a bloody path through the dense horde of wild beasts. However, before this bloody path could be filled, another dazzling stellar sword beam tore through the void and shattered the firmament. Yi Fei, one man and one sword, slaughtered the desolate beasts. He killed until his body was covered in blood. His eyes were bloodshot, as though he had forgotten everything. However, the only thing he did not forget was the villagers. The villagers, the group of naughty children who often pestered him to tell stories. Get out quickly, while we can still fight, while we can still kill. Yi Fei roared on the bloody path. He was so tired that he couldn't lift his sword, but soon he seemed to have forgotten about his fatigue. His blood burned even more fiercely. A ray of starry light, accompanied by the whistling Taiji sword Dao, slashed forward, trying hard to maintain the smooth path of blood. One by one, the villagers cried and screamed as they ran along the bloody road. However, before they left, they would look at Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu, as if they wanted to commit their faces to memory. They wanted to remember the two heaven gods who had sacrificed their lives to protect them. I really hate these two people. If I meet them outside, I will definitely kill them. Xuelingzi suddenly said angrily. He didn't know why he was so angry. Obviously, a large number of wild beasts had already rushed into the valley, and Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu were like arrows at the end of their flight. At this time, he should be happy and cheering for his victory. But why couldn't he cheer in his heart? Xuelingzi, maybe we did something wrong. A starry sky genius lowered his head and said softly, Slap. Xuelingzi's response was a loud slap. Do you mean that I did something wrong? Yes, I was ruthless, but I didn't do it for myself. I did it for the starry sky sect. That's right. Even if we were to take action, we would not be able to withstand the attacks of so many desolate beasts. This valley will be flattened by the desolate beasts sooner or later, unless we can find the hidden Beast King and kill that. But before that person could finish speaking, Blood Spirit Child suddenly realized something. He grabbed that person's collar and roared, "Bastard, you found a Beast King? Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier?" Roar. As if to prove that person's words, a furious roar of a desolate beast came from the void outside the valley. The entire group of desolate beasts that heard this roar panicked. It was obvious that this roar had come from the Beast King. It was a quasi-emperor level Beast King. It was very cunning. It had been hiding in the void all this time and had carefully concealed its aura. It had secretly ordered the ordinary wild beasts to attack the valley. However, at this moment, the hidden Beast King seemed to have been provoked by something and suddenly ran out of the void in anger. Accompanying the Beast King was a figure as black as lightning. It constantly surrounded the Beast King and fought with all its might. Boom! Such a shocking turn of events completely threw the attacking desolate beasts into chaos. One had to know that desolate beasts were a very special type of beast. They needed a leader or a Beast King to pose a threat. Once a leader or a Beast King was killed, the entire desolate beast horde would immediately descend into chaos. This was why Xuanlingzi was so angry. If he had known that there was a wild Beast King here, he would not have retreated from the valley. He would have concentrated all his strength to kill the Beast King and become the hero of the valley. Unfortunately, Xuanlingzi was not the only one who wanted to be the hero. This expert wanted to be the hero as well. Xuanlingzi was furious. Who is that person? Which Starry Sky sect does he belong to? How dare he use me and all of us to create an opportunity for me to kill the Beast King alone? Yi Fei also saw the hidden Beast King that was being chased out of the void. He was shocked. However, he was even more shocked when he saw the figure that was chasing the Beast King. Dongfang Yu could not help but exclaim, "The Black Hell Saint! He has been hiding among us all this time and used all of us. The enemy is in the dark while we are out in the open. It is indeed our mistake to be used by the Black Hell Saint." However, the Black Hell Saint still underestimated the strength of the Beast King. His assassination did not succeed. Once the Beast King escaped into the group of desolate beasts, his assassination would have failed completely. "Dongfang Yu!" Yi Fei suddenly shouted. "I understand. I'm here." Dongfang Yu also responded loudly. At this time, he exploded with all his strength. With a sudden punch, the surrounding wild beasts were all smashed to the ground. Kill! At this moment, Yi Fei suddenly withdrew the power of the Undying Sword Soul. There was a limit to the power of the Undying Sword Soul. It could only allow Yi Fei to kill some of the wild beasts, but not all of them. However, if he killed the Beast King, the effect will be different. Once the Beast King died, the wild beasts would be in chaos and flee without a fight. The Black Hell Saint's son had also calculated this point. That was why he had been holding back, planning to kill the Beast King in one blow. However, the Beast King was very cunning. It had reacted in advance and successfully avoided the fatal blow. This made the Black Hell Saint angry and anxious. When he saw Yi Fei breaking through the void, his eyes lit up. "Yi Fei, shall we cooperate?" "Okay." Without saying anything else, Yi Fei's body was burning with bloody flames the moment he broke through the void. He no longer had the strength to wield his black sword. However, he still had the strength to activate the bloodline godly armor and fight for another chance for the Black Hell Saint's assassination. Roar! The Beast King also felt the fatal danger at this moment. It let out an even more furious roar. Its huge beast horns suddenly exploded with a terrifying power that could pierce through the void. It charged towards Yi Fei ferociously. Chapter 1586. However, Yi Fei did not retreat. At the critical moment, the powerful defense of the bloodline godly armor turned Yi Fei into a sturdy wall that blocked the Beast King's attack. Shock flashed through the Black Hell Saint's son's cold expression. He couldn't believe that Yi Fei was willing to sacrifice his life to give him a chance to assassinate him. Soon after, the Black Hell Saint Sun emitted a murderous aura that was even more terrifying than hell. God-slaying spear. The murderous aura was so strong that it could shatter heaven and earth. The Black Hell Saint held the blood-red divine spear in his hand. It was like the gaze of the Grim Reaper. The terrifying spear radiance pierced through the Beast King's abdomen. While the Beast King's internal organs were crushed, the blade of the spear pierced through the Beast King's head. The blade of the spear, which was still dripping with blood, stopped 1 centimeter away from Yi Fei's throat. This 1 centimeter was the difference between life and death. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. Xuelingzi's furious roar could be heard from afar. Unfortunately, Xuelingzi's action of retreating from the valley meant that he had lost the initiative. Even if he reacted later, he was not as fast as Yi Fei to use the greater void space. He had reached the Beast King's side in time. The only thing Xuelingzi could do was to watch Yi Fei use the godly armor to block the Beast King's final attack. Then, the Black Hell Saint's god-slaying blade pierced through the Beast King's heart and head. With the 2 vital points severely injured, no matter how strong the wild beast was, it would not be able to survive. It had a chance to survive. Yi Fei even saw a desolate beast's soul being torn to shreds by the god-slaying blade spear. However, the shattered soul of the wild beast did not disappear. Instead, it was sucked into the Black Hell Saint's body by the whirlpool. So this is the reason why you went around killing people. Yi Fei suddenly realized why the Black Hell Saint went around killing people the moment he woke up. He was so crazy that he even dared to assassinate an exceptional genius. Obviously, the Black Hell Saint was killing people for cultivation. Humph! Seeing that Yi Fei had seen through his cultivation technique, the Black Hell Saint's eyes were filled with murderous intent again. However, when he thought of how Yi Fei sacrificed his life to shield him, the murderous intent in his eyes gradually disappeared. I will not kill you this time, but the next time we meet, you will still be my target, the Black Hell Saint said coldly as he kept his spear. I'll wait. If you kill me. Yi Fei sneered. On the other hand, Spirit Blood Z was even more displeased with Yi Fei and the Black Hell Saint. Seeing that Yi Fei and the Black Hell Saint had joined forces to kill the most important Beast King without waiting for him, Spirit Blood Z was so angry that his hair was on fire. Die! Die! Heaven and earth trembled as Master Blood's spirit roared furiously, and the world within the spell formation gradually grew blurry. This test is finally over. Yi Fei let out a long sigh. He took one last look at the world within the spell formation. Vaguely, he could see the villagers who were lucky enough to survive. They had smiles on their faces as they waved at him. He could also see the dead villagers under the light of the spell formation. Gradually, they came back to life and stood up from the ground. Great! Xiao Chui is alive again. Our efforts were not in vain. Dongfang Yu cried on the spot. Yi Fei felt a chill run down his spine. He could not help but say, Dongfang Yu, you can stay if you like. Get lost. Dongfang Yu was so angry that he almost fought with Yi Fei on the spot. Roar. At this moment, Xuelingzi's furious roar resounded in the main hall of the Array faction. Yi Fei, you and you. How dare the 3 of you work together to trick me? Just you wait. I'll kill you when we get out. Why wait until we get out? Kill them now. The other Starry Sky elites were also furious. They wished they could swallow Yi Fei and the other 2 alive. The Black Prison Saint was expressionless, as if he had not heard them. Yi Fei looked calm, as if he had not heard them. Only Dongfang Yu was a little worried. He was the weakest here. Fortunately, his worry did not last long. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out in the main hall of the Array faction. The sect leader is here. Anyone who makes a scene will die. Boom! Along with the voice of the Array spirit, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared in the main hall. It was as if a god had descended to the mortal world. A giant figure suddenly appeared in the main hall. The figure had been sitting with his back to the crowd. At this moment, he slowly turned around in the void and revealed a majestic face. Martial God. Feeling the terrifying aura, all the martial artists present, including Yi Fei, felt their souls trembling. They felt as if their souls were about to collapse. Only a martial god could possibly possess such an aura. Plop, plop, under the gaze of the martial god. Many of the geniuses of the Starry Sky sect suddenly felt their legs go weak. The moment they knelt on the ground, their figures had disappeared from the main hall of the Array faction. This caused Yi Fei's heart to skip a beat. He knew that the martial god's gaze was judging them, judging everything they had done in the valley. Those who were qualified would remain, while those who were unqualified or unable to withstand the martial god's gaze would be eliminated. Under the gaze of the martial god, all the other geniuses of the Starry Sky sect knelt on the ground, except for Shui Lingzi, who was a peerless genius. Their figures were driven out of the mountain gate of the Earth Array faction by the Array. This made Yi Fei even more nervous. Even the Black Prison Saint's cold face showed a trace of indifference. Finally, the martial god's gaze fell on Dongfangyu. Dongfangyu was so nervous that Yi Fei could hear his heartbeat. The number of desolate beasts you killed was too little. You should not have been able to pass the test. However, at the final moment, you were willing to sacrifice your life to protect the villagers. This determination is very rare and very valuable. Zhenling, bring him to the true sect, said the battle god. Yes, your majesty. The Array spirit transformed into an old man and took Dongfangyu away. You were quite scheming, but you were able to hide and kill the enemy in one strike. You have contributed by protecting the villagers. You are qualified to enter the ranks of the Guardians. Array spirit, bring him into the mountain gate. The martial god looked at the Black Prison Saint. Chapter 1587. Blood Spirit Master's face turned red when he heard this. He didn't care that the person in front of him was a real martial god. He immediately shouted, I don't accept this. I killed more desolate beasts than the other two. Why can't I pass? That's right. You killed many desolate beasts, but you killed even more villagers. As a guardian, killing desolate beasts is secondary. If you don't even care about the lives of the villagers, how can the Array faction rest assured and let you guard the ancient road of the Starry Sky? The martial god shook his head and looked at Blood Spirit Master coldly. Array Spirit, chase this abandoned person out of the Array faction. He might become a martial god in the future, but he definitely won't be a qualified guardian. Yes, God. Another burly Array spirit appeared in front of Blood Spirit Master. He lifted Blood Spirit Master's neck and threw him out. I don't accept this. I don't accept this. Blood Spirit Master had never dreamed that an exceptional genius like him wouldn't be able to pass the second test of the Guardian. He had even been thrown out by the Array spirit. He had embarrassed himself in front of the martial god. Blood Spirit Master spat out a mouthful of blood when he was thrown out of the Earth Array faction by the Array spirit. When he saw the other Starry Sky geniuses looking at him strangely, Blood Spirit Master was so angry that his body emitted demonic flames. He was so angry that he almost went berserk. Fortunately, the heaven-level quasi-emperors of the Blood River sect realized that something was wrong and came to his rescue. They quickly took action to suppress the inner demons in Blood Spirit Master's heart. One of the heaven-level quasi-emperors shouted, Blood Spirit Master, pull yourself together. You are an exceptional genius. Even if this opportunity doesn't belong to you, there will be a next time. There are so many martial gods on the ancient road of the Starry Sky. There will be a martial god who will favor you. Even though he said that Spirit Bloodchild was still unwilling to give up, he immediately lashed out at the heaven-grade quasi-emperors. Elders, why did you only arrive now? If you had come earlier, I wouldn't have lost so badly. The heaven-level quasi-emperors' faces turned ugly. They smiled bitterly and said, Do you think we didn't want to help? When the Earth Array faction appeared, the entire ancient road of the Starry Sky was affected. Martial emperors and heaven-level quasi-emperors would be suppressed. It's already a miracle that we were able to shake off the influence of the formation and rush here so quickly. It's not bad. Array Faction Main Hall. The formation spirit that had tossed the Blood Spirit Master out came back and reported. Reporting to the Sect Master, I discovered a heaven-grade quasi-emperor outside. He broke free of the restriction and is rushing over. It doesn't matter. They're just a bunch of ants. Even if a few of them jump out, they won't be able to cause any trouble. As for you, the martial god finally noticed Yi Fei. Yi Fei was very depressed. He had been standing there for a long time, but this martial god had actually pretended not to see him. If he could, he really wanted to curse at this moment. At the same time, the martial god looked at Yi Fei with some hesitation. He deliberated for a moment before continuing. Your performance was commendable. You did the most to slay the desolate beasts. You also put in the most effort to protect the villagers. In the end, we were able to kill the Beast King and resolve the crisis the villagers faced. You also contributed a lot. Unfortunately, what's a pity? Yi Fei's heart tightened. The martial god sighed. Unfortunately, you were abandoned by the heavens. Your identity is too special. Otherwise, you would be the most suitable candidate to become a guardian. Boom! The martial god's words made Yi Fei's face turn pale. Then, he thought of something and hurriedly said, That's not right. Senior, you're discriminating. I met Elder Sister Array Fairy in the Human Array sect. She clearly said that even if I was abandoned by the heavens, I could still become a guardian. Your Array faction can't possibly. Go back on your words, right? Insolent kid, how dare you disrespect the Array faction? The burly formation spirit suddenly glared at Yi Fei fiercely. He was waiting for the Sect Master to give the order so that he could toss Yi Fei out as well. Yi Fei's back broke out in cold sweat. Only now did he realize that he had been too agitated and had accidentally offended the martial god. However, he quickly realized that, so what if he offended him? The martial god was clearly biased against people abandoned by the heavens. If he did not fight for it now, he would suffer a great loss. Thinking of this, Yi Fei no longer had any misgivings. He immediately retorted, The one who should shut up is you. Elder Sister Array Fairy clearly promised me that as long as I came to the Earth Array faction, I would definitely become a guardian. Could it be that Elder Sister Array Fairy lied to me? You, don't try to claim friendship. The formation spirit looked burly, but he was very meticulous. He could tell at a glance that Yi Fei had ulterior motives when he kept referring to Elder Sister Array Fairy. Senior, I'm not calling her that randomly. Actually, I also wanted to call Elder Sister Array Fairy Senior. Unfortunately, Elder Sister Array Fairy was very unhappy. She said that her greatest regret was that she did not have a younger brother when she was alive. And when she saw me, it was as though she had seen her younger brother. Hence, she ordered me to call her Elder Sister Array Fairy. Yi Fei's expression was simple and honest, and his tone was slightly aggrieved. You actually want to deceive the Sect Master with such lies? The burly formation spirit's eyes were clearly filled with disdain. Yi Fei immediately took out the key to the Human Array faction and said, I'm not lying. If you don't believe me, take a look. This is the token that Elder Sister gave me. She said that I would bring this token with me. If I came to the Earth Array faction, the Sect Master would definitely give her face and take care of me. Could Elder Sister really be lying to me? Yi Fei's expression was dejected. My younger sister wouldn't lie. I, Elder Sister Array Fairy, can guarantee this. The martial god's expression was solemn. Greetings, Elder Brother Array Fairy. Yi Fei bowed respectfully to Elder Brother Array Fairy. When he heard the way he addressed him, the burly formation spirit's expression was no longer one of disdain, but one of mockery. Even Elder Brother Array Fairy himself was stunned. What did you call me? Elder Brother Array Fairy. I am Elder Sister Array Fairy's adopted younger brother. Her elder brother is my elder brother. Could it be that I'm wrong to address you this way? Yi Fei suddenly became worried. Elder Brother Array Fairy stared deeply at Yi Fei. Given his intelligence, he naturally saw through Yi Fei's intentions. He originally wanted to reject him, but when he saw Yi Fei take out the key, a gentle glint involuntarily flashed across his cold eyes. You're right. Even if our ideals are different, she is still my younger sister. Since she is willing to give this key to you, it proves that she thinks highly of you. If I were to reject you directly, that would be too heartless. On account of my younger sister, I will make an exception and allow you to pass this assessment. Formation spirit, bring him into the sect. Elder brother Array, fairy instructed. Chapter 1588. Yi Fei shouted, Brother Di Zongzi, please wait. Sister Di Zongzi told me that if I pass the test, the Earth Formation sect will help me break through to the martial emperor realm. Is that true? What else did she tell you? Di Zong's eyes widened as he asked in a deep voice. Sister Di Zongzi also said that the Earth Formation sect has a heaven and Earth Formation sect that can help me break through the tribulation of the martial emperor realm. That's why I came to the Earth Formation sect. Yi Fei said. He had to say that because breaking through to the martial emperor realm was related to his life. Since he had finally met a martial god like Di Zongzi, Yi Fei had to ask immediately to be at ease. When the Earth Formation spirit heard Yi Fei's question, he almost fainted. How is that possible? How could Miss Di Zongzi reveal such important information? That's a secret of the Earth Formation sect. No matter how big a secret is, there will be a day when it becomes ineffective. Now that we are all dead, what's the use of keeping a secret? Besides, he is a person abandoned by the heavens, and my little sister believes in that legend. Of course, she can tell him this secret. Diren was not very surprised. Yi Fei also understood something important from the Earth Formation sect's words. The Earth Formation sect did have the ability to help him break through the most difficult tribulation of the martial emperor realm. His heart shuddered. He no longer joked around and tried to establish a relationship with Di Zongzi. Instead, he brought his fists together at Di Zongzi and said in a serious tone, Senior Di Zongzi, I'm here to overcome the martial dominator tribulation. May I know what I have to do to convince you to help me? You're not calling me brother anymore? Di Zongzi looked like he was smiling. Yi Fei resolutely shook his head and said, If I could, of course I would want to call him that. Who wouldn't want to have a martial god as their backer? Just now, I was in a hurry. If I didn't try to curry favor with him like that, with Senior's prejudice against us people who have been abandoned by the heavens, he would have immediately chased me away and wouldn't have listened to me at all. Nonsense. Di Zongzi smiled and nodded. Little guy, you're smart. No wonder my proud sister chose you. You're right. If it weren't for your antics, I wouldn't have listened to you say so much. But at the same time, your efforts are only SOSO. Pride suddenly flashed across Di Lianzi's body as he said in a low voice, Since my sister was willing to tell you about the heaven and earth divine formation, then she should have also told you the reason why our ancient array sect split up. In the end, our family was too proud. Not only were our ideals different, but our beliefs were also different. Same. For example, my younger sister believes in the abilities of people who have been forsaken by the heavens, but I don't. Then what do I have to do to make you believe me? Yi Fei was not discouraged. Instead, he asked immediately. It was very important to him if he could use the heaven-earth divine formation to break through to the martial emperor realm. As long as there was a shred of hope, he would not give up. You have a good temperament. You clearly know that I've already rejected you, yet you still refuse to give up? She was suddenly curious about Yi Fei. He had seen too many so-called geniuses who cried bitterly after being rejected by him. However, he was surprised by Yi Fei's calmness. Yi Fei calmed himself down and said firmly, Why should I give up? What I can't get is because I didn't work hard enough. What I can get is because I worked hard enough. Things aren't over yet. Why should I give up? Well said. The war isn't over yet. Why did so many people want to give up back then? Little guy, I can feel a strong spiritual power from you. At first, I thought that you were an opportunist. But now I know that you're actually a person who is outwardly, but inwardly, outwardly. Middleman, I seem to see the figure of an old friend in you. An old friend? Who? Yi Fei was curious. A strange expression appeared on Di Zongzi's face as he said in a deep voice, He is an extremely casual and narcissistic person. I guarantee that every time you see him, you will want to beat him up. Of course, even though he is casual, he sticks to his principles. Even though he is narcissistic, he will never back down. In my heart, I want to beat him up. In terms of justice, I admire him. Everyone is in despair, but he is not in despair. Everyone has given up, but he is not in despair. Everyone is afraid, but he still has the courage. Why do I feel that the person described by you is a little familiar? Yi Fei felt a strange sense of familiarity in his heart. He took a deep look at Yi Fei and said, "Your persistence and your efforts have moved me, but it's not enough for me to take the risk and open the heaven and earth divine formation for you. However, I can give you one last chance. If you people abandoned by the heavens really have that kind of ability, then you can show it to me. Show it to me." Rumble. A strange wave suddenly appeared in the sky. Upon closer inspection, it was actually a flood of treasures. Countless treasures formed a flood, forming a special river of treasures. Di Zhanzi said, "This is the treasury of the Earth Divine Array sect. You should have seen it before. There are millions of treasures inside, from martial emperors to martial gods. It is the greatest treasure of the Earth Divine Array sect. Now, I will take 10,000 treasures. Now, show me your ability as a person abandoned by the heavens. Among the treasures, grab the earthly spirit pearl. I will make an exception and open the heaven and earth divine array for you once. Among the 10,000 treasures, grab the earthly spirit pearl." Yi Fei took in 10 breaths of cold air. This was a 1 in 10,000 chance, but he could not back down. Di Zhanzi had said that this was his last chance. Whether he could seize this opportunity to break through to Martial Emperor depended on whether he had the ability to grab the earthly spirit pearl. "Senior, may I ask what the earthly spirit pearl is like?" Yi Fei asked. "You have decided? Aren't you afraid?" Di Zhanzi asked. "Why should I? Fate is decided by the heavens, but the opportunity is in my hands." Yi Fei was very confident. At worst, he could let Xiao Qiao do it. Di Zhanzi was already dead anyway. Even if he found Xiao Qiao, he probably would not hurt Xiao Qiao. Yi Fei secretly calculated. Di Zhanzi did not speak. A ray of divine light appeared in his hand and condensed into the shape of the earthly spirit pearl. Yi Fei looked up and saw the earthly spirit pearl. His eyes almost popped out. That was the earthly spirit pearl. His expression suddenly became extremely strange, and he subconsciously stole a glance at the beast marked space. "Why aren't you grabbing it?" Di Zhanzi asked. Chapter 1589. Where did you get the earthly spirit pearl? Di Renzi's tone was no longer calm. He looked at Yi Fei in shock. "From this river of treasures. When I passed the first stage and chose the treasures, I grabbed this pearl," Yi Fei said innocently. Even though Di Renzi was a martial god, he was stunned when he saw the pearl. He had let Yi Fei grab the earthly spirit pearl randomly from the 10,000 treasures because of his old friend and sister. Even so, Di Renzi still couldn't believe that Yi Fei was so powerful. It was a miracle that he could grab the earthly spirit pearl on his first try. However, Yi Fei had already grabbed the only earthly spirit pearl from the 1,000,000 treasures without his help. Although Di Renzi had existed for 100,000 years and had seen countless geniuses who were 10 times or even 100 times stronger than Yi Fei, his face still twitched violently. He then laughed loudly and said, "Is this the will of the heavens? The abilities of people who have been abandoned by the heavens are indeed terrifying. My Di Renzi is convinced. Come with me." Not giving Yi Fei a chance to ask any more questions, Earth Formation Master waved his hand, and the millions of hidden spell formations in the Earth Formation sect began to rumble. This was no longer a sea of spell formations, but a world of spell formations. At this moment, Yi Fei was standing in this world, looking down at everything below him. There were countless formations in the square. What was more frightening was that these formations all had their own formation spirits. Each formation spirit was extremely powerful, and they were all martial emperors. Doesn't this mean that if these formation spirits turn into humans, there would be millions of martial emperors? Yi Fei couldn't help but be shocked. Earth Formation Master's dark face revealed a hint of pride as he pointed at the formation spirits and said, "These 1,000,000 formation spirits are the core of my Earth Formation sect, and they're also the key to forming the heaven and earth formation. My Earth Formation Master's philosophy is that the entire world is a formation, and the heavenly Tao is the formation spirit of this formation. I can't help it. By comprehending its spirit, one could imitate its form and form another heaven and earth divine formation. Yi Fei, enter this divine formation and begin your martial emperor tribulation." Yi Fei suddenly felt depressed. "Senior, it seems that I haven't reached the stage where I can go through the martial emperor tribulation." Di Zongzi's face shuddered as he said in a deep voice, "Once you consume the earthly spiritual orb, you'll be able to break through the barrier and trigger the tribulation of the martial dominator realm." "I see. But after swallowing the earthly spirit pearl, Xiao Qiao will probably throw a tantrum again." Sigh. However, in order to break through to martial emperor as soon as possible, Yi Fei had no other choice. He quickly swallowed the earthly spirit pearl. Immediately, he felt a special energy that was even more astonishing than spiritual energy fill his body. In an instant, Yi Fei's originally unbreakable barrier actually broke through in an instant. Yi Fei's cultivation had also officially entered the martial emperor realm from the half-martial emperor realm. Rumble. An aura of tribulation suddenly emanated from Yi Fei's body into the endless void. At the end of the void, the anger of the heavenly way could be felt. However, what the heavenly way emitted was no longer tribulation clouds. It was an arm formed by lightning. The arm was as big as a star, and it emitted the aura of a martial god. It was an aura, and a terrifying aura. Yi Fei was so frightened that his face turned pale. Could this be his martial emperor tribulation? What was descending was actually an arm of lightning that was comparable to a martial god's. At this moment, he finally understood why those who had been abandoned by the heavens were unable to go through the martial emperor tribulation. This was not a tribulation, it was simply suicide. Not to mention that a mere martial emperor like him would not be able to go through it. Even a martial emperor would be instantly blasted into smithereens by this arm of lightning that was comparable to a martial god's. What kind of sin did this brat commit? He actually attracted an attack from a martial god. Although the martial god formed by the heavenly way was not complete, Di Lianzi's eyebrows quickly furrowed. He then snorted coldly. The ultimate goal of the Earth Formation sect is to kill an earthly venerable. Even if the heavenly way formed a complete martial god, the Earth Formation sect would still kill it without hesitation. Kill! 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 A huge formation flag appeared in Di Lianzi's hand, and he waved it towards the sky. Instantly, the entire sky shook violently. In an instant, the starry sky surged and the sun and moon shattered. A divine formation of the heavens and earth rose from the ground. At this moment, the heavens and earth were squeezed out by the divine formation. Millions of martial emperors and array spirits rose from the ground. At this moment, it condensed into a golden divine fist. Then, the divine fist whizzed through the air like a piece of heaven and earth crushing another piece of heaven and earth. The arm of lightning had been completely destroyed by the divine fist. The entire starry sky was filled with the furious roar of the heavenly way. In the void, Yi Fei saw a vortex formed by lightning and formed a heavenly eye. It appeared in the void and coldly and mercilessly scanned everything in the universe. Di Lianzi said proudly, "Don't worry. After entering the heaven and earth formation, you are no longer in the heavenly way's heaven and earth formation. The heavenly way will not be able to find you and will not be able to kill you." Rumble. The sky was filled with terrifying lightning. Every bolt was enough to turn Yi Fei into ashes. However, just as Di Lianzi had said, under the cover of the heaven and earth formation, the heavenly eye in the void could not find Yi Fei's real body. In the end, it followed Yi Fei's body. Finally, the last trace of tribulation, Qi, disappeared. The heavenly eye at the end of the void gradually dissipated unwillingly. Yi Fei immediately felt a majestic power erupting from his body. At the same time, the 8 primordial spirits in his body suddenly merged into one. It was as if a deity in a royal robe was sitting cross-legged in his purple mansion. Royal robe on my body. Vital essence turns into a deity. From now on, I, Yi Fei, have finally become a martial emperor. The most difficult life and death tribulation for a person who has been abandoned by the heavens has been passed by me unscathed. Yi Fei was overjoyed to feel his increased power. He looked at his powerful primordial spirit, which had completely turned into a deity. He was very excited. Now, I am truly qualified to catch up with those peerless geniuses. Yi Fei clenched his fists. His heart was filled with a strong desire to fight. Di Lianzi looked at him disdainfully and said, "You are too useless if you only want to catch up with those peerless geniuses. After swallowing the earthly spirit pearl, you have already become a peerless genius. Remember, you will never catch up with them, but the 10 great geniuses who are stronger than them. They're the real people of this world. They're the most dazzling and powerful geniuses in the world. They're at least 10 times, no, 100 times stronger than peerless geniuses like you. For example, my sister and I are born martial gods. We are among the 10 great geniuses." Boom! As he spoke, a hint of arrogance appeared on Di Lianzi's body. He was waiting for Yi Fei's shocked and admiring gaze. Chapter 1590. However, after Yi Fei left, the Earth Sect Master smiled and said, "This lad is not bad. When others hear that I am one of the top 10 gifted geniuses, they all want to kneel down and curry favor with me. However, he is calm and not afraid of power. No wonder my sister likes him and gave him the key of destiny." However, when he saw that the Heaven and Earth Sect Master had used up most of the Heaven and Earth Sect Master's formation to help Yi Fei pass the heavenly tribulation, his face darkened. After being suddenly teleported away, Yi Fei finally woke up from his blissful stupor. Oh no, what did Big Brother Di Dian say in the end? He's a natural martial god. How could I miss such a good opportunity to flatter him? It was such a good opportunity to suck up to the martial god. What a pity. Yi Fei felt slightly gloomy, but as he recalled that he had successfully ranked up to the martial dominator realm and had become a peerless genius with the help of the earthly spirit orb, he soon felt relieved. The Earth Formation sect was divided into 2 parts. One part was the martial god's world outside, which was a fake sect. To enter the real sect, one had to pass the Earth Formation sect's personal test to enter the real sect. Before Yi Fei came in, many disciples who had passed the test were already waiting in the new Earth Formation sect's main hall. Dongfang Yu was also sitting cross-legged and cultivating silently. However, when they saw that a new person had been teleported in, almost everyone in the main hall opened their eyes. I wonder who will come in this time. A young man with a flame mark between his eyebrows opened his eyes. His eyes were emitting intense flames. Dongfang Yu and the top geniuses nearby were intimidated by the flames. However, some people did not care. They shook their heads and said coldly, "Who else could it be? Besides us, only Xuelingzi can come in." That's not necessarily true. Xuelingzi has a slim chance of coming in. The Black Hell Saint Sun glanced at Xueyu coldly. Xueyu's temper, as the young master of the Blade God Valley, immediately flared up. He immediately stood up and said, "Black Hell Saint Sun, are you doubting my judgment? I also think that Spirit Bloodchild has a higher chance of passing the test. After all, he's a peerless genius like us." Another white-robed figure spoke. However, he had a pair of purple eyes. He was born with the appearance of a saint. Hearing Di Fan's words, Xueyu and the Black Hell Saint's expressions were a little unhappy. However, I didn't say anything and just stared coldly at the figure that was gradually becoming clearer. Yi Fei. Dongfang Yu recognized Yi Fei immediately and ran over in surprise. Dongfang Yu, You've also broken through to the martial emperor realm. Yifei was also surprised to see Dongfang Yu running towards him. Of course, Di Fan and the other geniuses were the most shocked. Although Yifei didn't belong to their ranks, Yifei's reputation as the holy devil was second only to theirs. At the same time, all the people present were from the Sky Martial Continent. Of course, they had heard that Yifei was abandoned by the heavens. Now, Yifei had also broken through to the martial emperor realm. It seems that he's really been favored by the martial god in the second round of the test. Otherwise, given his identity, he would never have broken through to the martial emperor realm. The Black Hell Saint was a little unhappy. Of course, he also exuded the aura of a martial emperor. Not only him, but Yifei also discovered that the 10 people in the Array faction's main hall had all reached the martial emperor realm. He was a little surprised. They've all broken through. It seems that Brother D Fan is really powerful. Brother D Fan? This time, even D Fan couldn't help but frown. It was because when they were using the Array faction's array to go through the tribulation, they had inquired about the Earth Array faction from the Array spirit. They also knew that D Fan was the sect leader of the Array faction and a powerful ancient martial god. Yet now, Yifei was actually able to address the martial god as his brother. How could this be? The Black Hell Saint couldn't help but walk over. He asked curiously, Yifei, are you very close to Senior D Fan? Not very close. I've only chatted with Brother D Fan for a while. Yifei was a little distracted. He looked around but didn't see Fu Renjia, Zhao Yu, and Lu Qing. He was a little disappointed. He knew that they probably didn't come to the Earth Array faction to participate in the test. Hearing Yifei calling him Brother D Fan, the Black Hell Saint's face turned ugly. The young man with the flame mark on his forehead laughed disdainfully. He questioned on the spot, even we, the geniuses, can't get the favor of Senior D Fan. You're just a person abandoned by the heavens. Why do you have to talk to the martial god? You are? Yifei looked at the young man courteously. The young man snorted and arrogantly ignored Yifei. He's Huishao, the southern region's genius. It's said that he obtained the inheritance of the ancient fire cloud sacred sect Dongfang Yu introduced. So he's Huishao. It's a pity that he's not famous enough, Yifei said with a shocked expression, but his words almost made Huishao vomit blood. Then, Yifei ignored the Black Hell Saints and Huishao's feelings. He cupped his hands towards D Fan, and a battle intent appeared on his body. White Clothed War God D Fan, we finally meet again. That's right. The first time I saw you, you were still an ant. But now, you've already caught up to me. D Fan looked at Yifei with surprise. Yifei was annoyed. He knew that even now, D Fan still didn't treat him as an opponent. He couldn't help but provoke him. D Fan, I've said before that I'll definitely catch up to you and surpass you. Now, do you regret not killing me back then? D Fan's purple eyes flashed with a strange light. He then shook his head and said, Why should I regret it? I've said it before. No matter if it's you or anyone else, you're not my opponent. You're just my stepping stones. The stronger you are, the faster I can step on you and break through to the martial god realm. Martial god. D Fan, don't be too arrogant. I, Little Knife God, may not be afraid of you, White Clothed War God. And you, Yifei, I heard that you were the one who killed Shui Yun. Suddenly, a terrifying knife essence appeared on Shui Yun's body. The knife radiance made the entire Array faction hall shake. Dongfang Yu's expression suddenly changed. The Array faction hall wasn't protected by any array. Here, Shui Yu could fully activate his martial arts. Feeling Shui Yu's knife essence, a strong sword essence appeared on Yifei's body and fiercely collided with Shui Yu. Boom! Knife essence and sword essence roared like two unfathomable oceans, sweeping in all directions. However, Yifei and Shui Yu's bodies didn't move at all. It was like a heavenly knife and a divine sword facing each other from afar. Chapter 1591. Everyone stop. This is the Earth Array Sect's Mountain Gate. Whoever dares to be impudent will be disqualified from the third round. At the crucial moment, the burly array spirit appeared again. His words immediately made the Black Hell Saint Sun and D-Fan withdraw their fighting spirit. Only the small knife god looked at Yi Fei with dissatisfaction and said coldly, "Very well. It seems that I have underestimated you. However, Shui Yun's death cannot be forgotten. Let's fight in the third round. How about that?" "Sure. If you want to fight, I'll be there anytime." Yi Fei sneered. Coincidentally, he had broken through to the martial royal realm and transformed into a peerless genius. He had not tested his combat strength yet. Small Knife God's challenge could be used to test his current combat strength. In the Array Sect's main hall, besides the 5 peerless geniuses, Yi Fei, D-Fan, the Black Hell Saint's son, Shui Yu, and Hua Xiao, there were also 3 top geniuses from the martial emperor families and a saint from the Saint Institute. What was more surprising was that the last person was a rogue cultivator. He did not speak at all. He just closed his eyes and cultivated silently. When Yi Fei was fighting with Shui Yu, he also noticed this person. He was slightly surprised and asked Dongfang Yu, "There are top geniuses among the rogue cultivators?" "I don't know. He has never spoken and no one knows him," Dongfang Yu said in a low voice. Obviously, this person's maverick behavior had alerted everyone. With the Array Spirit's intervention, this conflict was temporarily resolved. Di Xiao and the Black Hell Saint Sun retreated unwillingly. Di Fan cupped his hands at the Array Spirit and said, "Senior, the 10 people have all arrived. May I ask when the third round of the test will begin?" The burly Array Spirit laughed and said, "The third round of the test has already begun. Do you really think that I have nothing better to do and will come out to interfere with your little games? Now all of you, into the light door. Whoever can last for a day and kill the 10 Beast King leaders will be qualified to become the Guardian. Whoever can reach the end first will get a small reward from the Sect Master." The Array Spirit's words made everyone's eyes light up. Yi Fei was also delighted. To the martial god, this was just a small reward, but to the younger generation, it was very likely that it was an amazing treasure. "I wonder what kind of reward Big Brother D left behind?" Yi Fei asked curiously. Hua Xiao sneered disdainfully. "Who do you think you are, trying to get acquainted with the martial god?" Unexpectedly, the formation's spirit glanced at Yi Fei and straightforwardly said, "That is a heavenly spirit pearl. There is a heavenly spirit pearl inside that can transform into a heavenly spirit domain of any attribute. There is also a drop of martial god's blood. As for who can obtain it, that will depend on your strength." "What?" "Heaven domain, and the war god's blood essence." Boom! The Black Hell Saint's Sun and Shui Yu were shocked. D-Fan and Hua Xiao were even more eager to fight. They wanted to push the others aside so that they could be the first to enter the light door. But even though they were fast, the rogue cultivator was faster. Almost as soon as the light door appeared, the rogue cultivator had already rushed in. When D-Fan reacted, he was already 1 step too late. "You're courting death. How dare you go in when we, the peerless geniuses, have it?" Hua Xiao was furious. His anger turned into a cloud of fire as he rushed in. "Where do you think you're going?" The Black Hell Saint Sun was filled with killing intent. He didn't care about his grudge with Yi Fei and rushed in as well. In the end, only Yi Fei, Shui Yu, and D-Fan were left in the hall. But compared to the battle with Yi Fei, D-Fan was obviously more interested in the martial god's reward. After hesitating for a while, he looked deeply at Yi Fei and said, "Let's fight again later, if you still have the chance." He won't have the chance. He will die under my blade." Shui Yu took out a cold steel battle blade. The sharp blade radiance emitted a snowy light. She said coldly, "Yi Fei, shall we go in and fight?" "Sure." Yi Fei nodded, and the blood sword appeared in his hand. Then Yi Fei held the black sword in his left hand and the blood sword in his right. He followed Shui Yu into the light door. Roar! Behind the light door was a world of wild beasts. Powerful wild beasts were everywhere, attacking from all directions. Because they had been sealed for so long, many of the wild beast leaders had broken through from the martial royal realm to the martial grand emperor realm. Dongfang Yu and the others were shocked. They had wanted to watch the battle, but now, in order to pass the test, they had to hurry up and kill the wild beast leaders. Kill! Yi Fei didn't fight with Shui Yu immediately. Instead, they both cleared the wild beasts around them. Yi Fei's black sword danced wildly like a falling star, shattering the void and mercilessly crushing the wild beasts around him. Boom! Suddenly, another terrifying blade radiance lit up the void. Shui Yu used the single stroke of heaven and earth. The huge blade radiance seemed to split the heavens and the earth, killing all the wild beasts around him in an instant. Obviously, Shui Yu's blade was more terrifying than Yi Fei's sword in terms of area of effect damage. After Shui Yu cleared the wild beasts around him, Yi Fei still had a dozen wild beasts left. Shui Yu's face instantly turned cold. Even if you have become a martial royal realm and become a peerless genius, you will still die if you offend the Blade God Valley. Take this, my blade of reality. Boom, boom, boom. In the void, a resplendent blue heavenly saber appeared once again. It was like a blue moon. It enveloped Yi Fei and the dozen or so desolate beasts. Without a sound, the souls of the dozen or so desolate beasts were shattered by the saber of truth. Their soulless bodies floated silently around Yi Fei. Then, with another boom, the bodies exploded, forming a blade of flesh and blood that wanted to kill Yi Fei mercilessly. Yi Fei's expression turned grave. Without a doubt, compared to Shui Yu, who was a peerless genius, the blade of reality was more terrifying. However, he did not flinch. Instead, a raging purple-gold flame appeared on his body. The golden mental nebula formed a huge vortex at this moment, and then a huge golden sword, which collided with the real saber that was slashing at him. Boom! The blue saber and the golden sword kept colliding. The more Yi Fei killed, the braver he became. The more he killed, the higher his fighting spirit became. All of a sudden, he roared. His entire spirit nebula burst out like a golden sun at this moment. Chapter 1592. Even though he was an exceptional genius, Yi Fei's mind power terrified Shui Yu. Not only has the color changed, but the strength of his mind power has also far surpassed mine. Yi Fei's eyes flashed coldly. Since Shui Yu dared to compete with him in terms of mind power, he was simply courting death. Yi Fei's mind power was already comparable to that of a true sorcerer. Even though he didn't know how to use the true blade of the Blade God Valley, he could condense a mind power sword with his powerful mind power. It was enough to completely crush Shui Yu's half-baked mind power attack. Shui Yu had only used the blade of truth to block a dozen sword strikes, but his mental strength had been completely depleted, and an abnormal paleness flashed across his face. However, he was still an exceptional genius. When he realized his mistake, he immediately roared angrily and withdrew the true blade. A blue mind armor appeared in front of him to block his attack. At the same time, Yi Fei's true blade pierced the mind armor. Yi Fei roared, and his majestic mind power exploded once again. Break! Boom! Boom! The mind sword suddenly emitted a blinding golden light. Not only did it shatter Shui Yu's mind armor, but it also penetrated Shui Yu's body and slashed toward his soul. Shui Yu immediately roared angrily. A primordial spirit wearing a royal robe appeared in his mind palace. He walked out and raised his shield again to block the front. Primordial spirit shield, protect my body. Primordial spirit saber, slay my enemy. Shui Yu's eyes, ears, mouth, and nose were all bleeding from Yi Fei's mind sword. However, this didn't make him retreat. Instead, it made Shui Yu instantly reach the peak of his power. As a swordsman, the most important thing was to kill. Shui Yun's blade of primordial spirit had undoubtedly unleashed this killing power to its limits. The whistling blade flare instantly broke through its limits. Not only did it shatter Yi Fei's sword of truth, but it also slashed in the opposite direction towards Yi Fei. A look of astonishment flashed across Yi Fei's eyes. The purple gold light suddenly burned on Yi Fei's body like a raging inferno. The purple gold Taiji was instantly released, blocking Shui Yu's crazy blade. At the same time, Yi Fei's blood sword quickly slashed out a huge Taiji sword diagram. Then, the Taiji sword diagram split into 4 different sword daos. Then it perfectly and coldly slashed forward. Taiji sword dao. Tai Chi 4 phases sword. Azure dragon sword, black tortoise sword, vermilion bird sword, black tortoise sword. Boom, 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 boom. 4 streaks of sword light surrounded the Taiji sword and crushed the void. The space where the 2 of them were standing was torn apart. In this crumbling space, Shui Yu's blade flare rumbled like thunder. It was as if heaven and earth were collapsing. He raised his cold iron saber with both hands. The blade flare tore the sky apart. It shattered the earth. Wherever the blade flare passed, the sky collapsed and the earth sank. Blade of heaven and earth, Shui Yu roared. At this moment, he was like an indestructible killing blade. He actually suppressed Yi Fei's Taiji sword. Taiji domain. Yi Fei was instantly enraged. He would never allow his sword to be defeated by Shui Yu's blade. He roared angrily. Suddenly, a blurry black and white world appeared behind him. It formed a domain and continued to increase the power of the 4 phases sword. Massacre domain. Shui Yu became even crazier. A world of slaughter also appeared around the blade he raised. Wherever the blade light passed, the surroundings would instantly become a terrifying field of slaughter. This caused Yi Fei to be secretly shocked. He discovered that this Shui Yu was truly crazy. Other absolute geniuses all cultivated multiple types of daos. However, Shui Yu only cultivated a single domain. There was a disadvantage to cultivating such a domain. It would be very passive when faced with a domain that countered it. However, cultivating a single domain would allow an exceptional genius to reach the Earth domain faster. At this moment, Shui Yu was like this. His Massacre domain had already reached the Earth domain level. At this moment, Shui Yu suddenly revealed this trump card. The power of his blade flare instantly doubled. It actually shattered the Azure Dragon Divine sword in an instant. White Tiger Divine Sword. Starlight. Smash it. The moment the Tai Chi domain was shattered, Yi Fei suddenly retracted his blood sword. He ignited his bloodline and threw out the Starlight sword embryo. The entire black sword instantly turned into a star-like Tai Chi sword diagram. It changed from the 4 phases sword to the yin-yang sword. The sword was like a swimming fish. It suddenly collided with Shui Yu's blade. The blade flare collided. Then, he heard a huge explosion. Shui Yu was shocked to find that the killing aura on his cold iron blade, including his slaughter domain, had been smashed into pieces by the black sword. Clang! The cold iron blade and the starlight sword embryo collided. The entire space was filled with dazzling blade flare and sword flare. Then, they separated and collided again. Heavenly blade of heaven and earth. Shui Yu was in a frenzy. Even when his domain was shattered, he didn't retreat. His blade flare became even more frenzied. At this moment, it was filled with a tragic aura of death on the battlefield. Good blade. However, you're still no match for my sword. After Yi Fei destroyed the domain with his black sword, he immediately moved his right hand. The blood sword, which had been waiting for a long time, suddenly emitted a dazzling light. At this moment, it was filled with the strong will of a swordsman. Clang! The blade and sword collided again. Yi Fei suddenly felt a sharp pain in his chest. His physical body, which was comparable to a demigod weapon, was torn apart by Shui Yu's blade flare. A bloody gash appeared on his chest. Of course, Shui Yu didn't have it easy either. His primordial spirit shield could block the attack of the demigod weapon blood sword. The black sword, which couldn't block the starlight sword embryo, smashed Shui Yu's primordial spirit shield into pieces. Damn it! Defensive blade! Shui Yu's expression changed drastically. He couldn't believe that Yi Fei's black sword was more terrifying than the starlight sword's martial arts. Most importantly, this sword embryo made from stars was too heavy. When it was thrown out, it was equivalent to the power of a star. Even a martial emperor would spit out blood if he was hit by such a force. Furthermore, Shuiyu had just become a martial emperor. Bam! Yi Fei's sword landed squarely on Shuiyu's cold iron blade. The demigod weapon was badly damaged. Shuiyu spat out blood and retreated frantically. His forehead was covered in cold sweat. That black sword is so terrifying. I, small knife god, can't even compare to one. Abandoned by the heavens. Roar! Shuiyu roared like an injured beast. However, he didn't continue fighting with Yi Fei. Instead, he turned around and rushed into the group of dire beasts. Countless blade lights wreaked havoc among the dire beasts. Yi Fei was shocked to find that every time Shuiyu killed a dire beast, he could absorb its life force and recover it quickly. Chapter 1593. Boom! Yi Fei communicated with the undying sword soul, and a large amount of thunder punishment liquid flowed into his body. The injury on his chest healed immediately. Then, just as Yi Fei was about to finish off Shuiyu in one go, Dongfang Yu's angry roar came from the group of wild beasts not far ahead. Due to the stimulation of the heaven-ranked domain and the martial god's blood essence, everyone who entered this space became competitors. Yi Fei and Dongfang Yu were no exception. Therefore, they didn't help each other and fought their own battles. Dongfang Yu and the other three top geniuses even took advantage of the fierce battle between Yi Fei and Shuiyu to open a bloody path ahead of Yi Fei and Shuiyu. However, just as Dongfang Yu and the other three thought that they could take advantage of the chaotic battle between the top geniuses to sneak to the front, Hua Xiao, who had walked in front, suddenly came back. He wanted to seriously injure Dongfang Yu and the other three geniuses. The roar just now was because Dongfang Yu was seriously injured. Seeing Dongfang Yu on fire and being beaten back by Hua Xiao, Yi Fei suddenly felt a burst of anger in his chest. Hua Xiao, how dare you hurt my good brother? Boom! The void was torn apart by Yi Fei's sword. He used the void steps and appeared in front of Hua Xiao in an instant. The heavy black sword smashed towards Hua Xiao with a force that could shatter the void. However, a flaming fist suddenly fell from the sky and collided with Yi Fei's black sword. It even smashed Yi Fei back on the spot. He took a few steps back. So what if I hurt your brother? Yi Fei, you destroyed Scorching Sun City. Our hatred has already been formed. Do you know that Scorching Sun sect used to be the outer sect of Fire Cloud's sacred sect in the starry sky? Now die. Burning mountain fire. Hua Xiao suddenly spat out a terrifying flame from his mouth. It wasn't heaven fire or divine fire, but primordial spirit true fire, which was even more terrifying than divine fire. Only a martial emperor would be able to unleash such a flame. Once the true flame appeared, when the primordial spirit true fire appeared, the void was set ablaze. Countless wild beasts were instantly burned to ashes in the flames. At this moment, Yi Fei didn't even look at the primordial spirit true fire. His body burned with golden flames. The battle demon way was pushed to the extreme. Every piece of Yi Fei's flesh and every cell was now like a golden star, emitting a terrifying light. He roared and slashed forward with the black sword again. Boom! Heaven and earth trembled violently under the weight of the black sword. The true fire that Hua Xiao spat out was blasted into pieces by this explosive power. Hua Xiao's originally complacent face suddenly turned serious, as if he didn't dare to believe that Yi Fei was here. After a huge battle with Shuiyu, he was still able to retain such tyrannical strength. His primordial flame, true fire, had true fire. Fury of the fire god, Hua Xiao roared furiously. His body suddenly turned into a terrifying flaming god of war. His every move emitted terrifying flames as he charged towards Yi Fei. You want to compete with me in close combat? Yi Fei's eyes flashed coldly. Dongfang Yu's burns had filled his heart with great anger. This anger suddenly turned into a terrifying dragon's roar. The dragon's roar shattered the sky. Then, tiger stripes appeared on Yi Fei's face. His hands turned into dragon claws. Fire wings spread out from his back, and a long tortoise tail extended from his back. This was the four symbols of true martial, the fury of the Azure Dragon, which had been improved by the Grand Supreme Dean. This was the primordial heaven skill that was most suitable for close combat after the Grand Supreme Dean had improved it. Although the cultivation technique was incomplete, it still exploded with terrifying power in Yi Fei's hands. With a boom, it collided with Hua Zhao's flaming body. Kill, die. After using the fury of the Azure Dragon, Yi Fei had undoubtedly turned into a human-shaped dragon beast. Not only was his strength shocking, but the majesty of the Azure Dragon, the killing intent of the White Tiger, the fury of the Vermilion Bird, and the sturdiness of the Black Tortoise were all vividly displayed by Yi Fei. Hua Zhao's face flashed with shock. How is this possible? He has just transformed into a peerless genius. His sword principle should have been able to defeat Shuiyu. Who would have thought that his close combat strength could actually contend with mine? Shuiyu, what are you waiting for? Join hands with me and kill Yi Fei. Hua Zhao suddenly roared towards the distance. He didn't want to waste too much time fighting Yi Fei in close combat. Shuiyu's eyes were red as she attacked from behind. He immediately thought of the fastest way to defeat Yi Fei. You want to use me, Shuiyu? You're just a bastard from the starry sky and the southern region. Do you think you're worthy? Shuiyu obviously knew Hua Zhao's background. Although she didn't like Yi Fei, she had no intention of cooperating with Hua Zhao. Seeing that Yi Fei and Hua Zhao were locked in battle, Shuiyu's heart was filled with ecstasy. He directly rushed from the side of the two to the front, instantly raising his ranking from last to fourth. Not far in front of Shuiyu, Di Fan, the Black Hell Saint, and the rogue genius were already engaged in a fierce battle. Yi Fei was shocked to find that the rogue cultivator had intentionally hidden his strength. He was not a top genius, but he was a powerful, peerless genius. Not only was he the first to enter the door of light, but he was also the first to enter the door of light. If it weren't for Di Fan and the Black Hell Saint's quick reaction, he might have been the first to enter the light door and obtain the gift left behind by the Earth God. After a long battle, the rogue genius started to panic when he saw Shuiyu rushing over from behind. All of you, get out of my way! Suddenly, a strong bronze light appeared on his body. Then, an ancient bronze armor appeared on his body. At the same time, a heavy bronze spear appeared in his hand. He used the spear to block the Black Hell Saint's spear. He used the armor to block the Black Hell Saint's attack. Then, he used the spear to stab Di Fan. Di Fan, the white-clothed god of war, was thoroughly enraged. You are the ones who should get lost. All of you are just my stepping stones. If I can't even beat a bunch of stepping stones, I, Di Fan, am an innate saint. Kill. 3 saint fists, non-offensive. Di Fan roared. Rolling purple clouds formed above his head. On top of the clouds, there were 3 saints sitting cross-legged in the void. Following Di Fan's punch, one of the sages stood in the clouds and waved a purple light that covered a radius of 300 miles. Under this light, any martial arts light would be dissolved and no one would be able to continue using it. The rogue genius's spear also lost its brilliance in an instant. However, the spearhead had completely dimmed. Chapter 1594. It wasn't over yet. When Di Fan defeated the rogue cultivator, he suddenly roared. On the purple cloud, the third sage stood up. Following Di Fan's roar, a dazzling purple light bloomed. At the same time, the Black Prison Saint's cold figure appeared behind Di Fan. He raised the god-slaying blade and took advantage of the time when Di Fan defeated the rogue cultivator to launch the Black Prison's strongest and most terrifying shadow assassination. Under his light, the god-slaying blade, a semi-divine tool, almost turned into a ray of light. The shadow of the god-slaying blade pierced through Di Fan's back. At the same time, the last sage on Di Fan's purple cloud turned into a ray of light and formed a majestic purple armor, protecting Di Fan. Hygiene. Di Fan's cold voice came from the sky. This hygiene didn't mean that he was clean, but that he was defending life. The 3 saint fists not attacking, fighting. Hygiene. Each of these moves represented a sage's Tao. When the 3 Taos combined, this was the true sage's fist. It could shake the heavens and earth, and even space and time. In the ancient times, the human tribe not only had martial gods, but also human emperors and sages. Among them, the three Saint Fists was jointly created by the three sages. Its power wasn't as strong as the immemorial heavenly art, but it was called the immemorial sacred art. Only sages could use this martial art. As an innate sage, Defan was born with the ability to use this martial art. He could even unleash the full power of this martial art. No matter how strong the Black Prison Saint's assassination technique was, in front of the sage's armor, its light was inevitably dimmed. Then, the purple cloud that filled the sky retracted. Defan's body burned fiercely again. A terrifying sacred fire was ignited. Sacred fire of heaven and earth. War God catalog. Defan didn't use the three Saint Fists again. Instead, he suddenly used a terrifying immemorial heavenly art, making him look like a purple war god. He suddenly turned around and punched the Black Prison Saint's body with a powerful purple fist. Shadow, doppelganger. The Black Prison Saint's face was cold. He suddenly split into two, then three. Like countless shadows, he rushed in all directions. But before his shadows could rush out, Defan's purple fist suddenly exploded all the shadows in the sky. The Black Hell, Saint Sun's real body, was also severely injured. He spat out blood and was forced to retreat a few thousand meters. While the two of them were retreating, Defan rushed towards the light gate with holy light Yin Yan. Yifei was fighting with Huashao. Seeing this, his face turned ugly. He suddenly gave up on Hua, Shao, and tore through the void, instantly appearing in front of Defan. Yifei, how dare you stop me? Defan's holy light, Yin Yan, carried the aura of having defeated two peerless geniuses in a row. Every move he made had the power to control the life and death of others. This was an innate saint. Compared to Defan, the Black Prison Saint was an ancient genius. But he was best at assassination. He was not good at fighting head-on. In the previous battle, the Black Prison Saint had suffered the most injuries. But Yifei wasn't frightened. In the end, if he wanted to successfully cultivate the 8 extreme heavenly dragons Empyrean cultivation method, he needed to condense at least 8 powerful domains and cultivate an ancient heavenly art. As for these 8 domains, if he were to rely on himself to cultivate them, he would need dozens of years or even hundreds of years to do so. I can give up on the martial god's essence blood, but I must get that heavenly realm. Yifei's expression was cold. As he spoke, a strong purple-gold light appeared on his body. The Battle God Path and Battle Demon Path were perfectly activated. They formed a terrifying force of despair. Defan was furious. Don't even think about it. All of you are just stepping stones for me to become a martial emperor and a martial god. Those 2 treasures will belong to me, Defan. Kill. 3 sacred fists, not offensive. Purple chi from the east, the arrival of a saint. The purple chi above Defan's head was as big as a cloud. There was a green hut with 3 sages sitting in it. At this moment, one of the sages walked out of the green hut and released a strong purple light. He wanted to neutralize Yifei's attack. The hidden dragon is not used. It is not offensive. Sorry, I'm not a stepping stone. I'm a stumbling block. You can't step over it. You will only trip in front of me. The howling force of despair formed a dazzling Tai Chi sword diagram. However, the sword diagram did not attack Defan. Instead, it formed a perfect Tai Chi sword diagram to protect Yifei. Puff! When Dongfang Yu and the others saw Yifei rushing up aggressively, they thought that there would be a bloody battle. Who knew that Yifei would defend himself the moment he went up? They were so depressed that they almost vomited blood. Defan's face turned extremely ugly. The 3 sacred fists were not offensive. Although it could neutralize all of the opponent's attacks, it could not neutralize the opponent's defense. Defan was surprised. I have only used it once. How can you see the flaw of my 3 sacred fists? Yifei shook his head. There is no perfect martial art in this world. If there is a martial art, there must be a flaw. For example, Although his purple gold Tai Chi was said to be invincible and invincible, it was still unable to withstand non-martial arts or spiritual attacks. Battle! Di Fan snorted coldly and did not say anything else. Another saint walked out of the purple cloud green hut. He suddenly controlled the heaven and earth and turned into a divine light that smashed toward Yi Fei. Only I am heaven and earth battle. Break the heaven and earth. Understanding the power of Di Fan's punch, Yi Fei suddenly condensed all of his strength into sword light. They formed 4 divine swords that shattered the sky. The Tai Chi 4 phases sword had reached its limit at this moment. It broke through the divine light and was about to slash Di Fan. Cleanse! Di Fan roared. Purple chi gathered around his body and turned into armor. Purple flames burned around him. He was like a purple flame war god. He threw out a divine punch and shattered the divine swords. Obviously, the 3 sacred fists were more powerful. Yi Fei's face changed. He suddenly felt an extreme danger coming from behind. Without thinking, the purple gold light around his body suddenly expanded and formed a purple gold Tai Chi to protect him. Boom! A fireball smashed onto the purple gold Tai Chi. Not only did it shatter instantly, the high temperature of the explosion also melted Yi Fei in an instant. However, the purple gold Tai Chi had bought him some time. Taking advantage of this time, Yi Fei suddenly stepped into the void and dodged the fireball. Suddenly, his sword slashed toward Hua Xiao, who had ambushed him. Kill! Heaven and earth slash! At this moment, Shui Yu suddenly attacked from his side. However, she did not attack Yi Fei. Instead, she took advantage of Hua Xiao's unpreparedness and attacked him. Shui Yu, you're courting death. Hua Xiao was extremely furious. He never thought that Shui Yu would attack him instead of attacking Yi Fei. Hua Xiao was so angry that he almost died on the spot. At this moment, the scene became extremely chaotic. Yi Fei was facing the joint attack of Di Fan and Hua Xiao, while Hua Xiao was facing the joint attack of Yi Fei and Shui Yu. Chapter 1595. Facing such a crisis, Yi Fei was already considering if he should reveal his bloodline godly armor. But at this moment, the Black Hell Saint's cold voice sounded in his ears. Yi Fei, how about we join forces? You defend, and I attack. Let's force Di Fan to retreat first before deciding the winner. Black Hell Saint, how dare you? White-clothed war god Di Fan suddenly roared in anger. Just as he was about to use the war god catalog to heavily injure Yi Fei, the Black Hell Saint discovered a fatal flaw in Di Fan's defense and attacked again. This forced Di Fan to give up on Yi Fei and turn back to face the Black Hell Crown Prince. Yi Fei knew that the Black Hell Crown Prince was expressing goodwill to him, but he didn't turn back to attack Di Fan. Compared to Di Fan, he hated Hua Xiao even more. Taking advantage of Di Fan being held back by the Black Hell Saint, Yi Fei suddenly used all his strength and smashed the black sword in his hand. At this moment, he and Shui Yu formed a pincer attack on Hua Xiao. Hua Xiao was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, his entire body turned into a terrifying flaming war god. 2 terrifying flames ignited the void and formed a terrifying sea of fire. Just as the sea of fire formed, a murderous blade light and a resplendent golden light tore through the sea of fire at the same time and slashed toward Hua Xiao's body. Hua Xiao was instantly enraged. The roaring flames formed a terrifying cloud of fire, but it still couldn't stop them from being torn apart. Fate! In the void, Hua Xiao's angry and painful scream sounded. He didn't expect that his sneak attack on Yi Fei would end up being humiliated by Yi Fei and Shui Yu. Although he didn't die, Hua Xiao's chest was caved in by the black sword. His back was cut deeply by Shui Yu's cold iron blade. A deep wound. Fire cloud, true body. At this critical moment of life and death, Hua Xiao's entire body turned into a beam of fiery light that scattered in all directions, fleeing into the distance. Kill! Yi Fei did not show any mercy. His heavy black sword directly smashed a piece of fire cloud into ashes. Kill. Shuiyu also attacked mercilessly. The boiling killing intent formed a terrifying slaughter blade aura. The slaughter blade aura had a wide range to begin with, and Dagger God's attack cut half of the fire cloud into nothingness. In the end, only a quarter of the fire cloud escaped and formed Hua Zhao's body in the distance. Yi Fei, Shuiyu, you win. I, Hua Xiao, will definitely get my revenge. Hua Xiao angrily roared. Dragging his severely damaged body, he frantically retreated in an incomparably sorry state. He actually rushed to the entrance. He planned to give up on the test and rush out as soon as something went wrong. Back to the Erased Sect's main hall. The martial arts of the Fire Cloud Sacred Sect are somewhat strange. This should be a life-saving primordial heavenly skill. Unless I can destroy all the fire cloud in one go, it will be very difficult to kill this person. Yi Fei shook his head. Compared to killing Hua Xiao, he was more concerned about the reward left behind by the martial god. Kill. Yi Fei and Shuiyu did not hesitate. The instant they forced Hua Xiao back, Yi Fei and Shuiyu immediately turned against each other. The whistling saber light and the resplendent sword light clashed intensely, erupting into a shocking saber light and sword fire. Yi Fei, Dagger God, that rogue cultivator is about to rush into the light door. Suddenly, Dongfang Yu and the others shouted. After entering this place, everyone was a competitor. Even if they were good friends, they wouldn't warn each other. However, there was no other way. While Dongfang Yu and the others were recovering from their injuries, the peerless geniuses who were present at the scene took advantage of the situation. While the others were fighting, the peerless geniuses had quietly rushed to the front. Unfortunately, just as they were about to rush into the light door, the rogue cultivator suddenly attacked from behind. He was about to kill them. In anger, Dongfang Yu and the others simply shouted. Hearing this shout, Yi Fei and Shuiyu immediately stopped fighting and joined forces. They combined their saber and sword and slashed at the rogue cultivator. The Black Hell Saint Sun and D-Fan were also infuriated. They also stopped fighting at the same time and attacked the rogue cultivator together. You all deserve to die. Don't let me see you outside. The rogue cultivator glared at Dongfang Yu and the others. However, facing the joint attack of 4 peerless geniuses at the same time, no matter how well he hid his strength, his face turned pale with fright. Then he staked everything on one throw and no longer cared about hiding his strength. He suddenly took out a token from his body and quickly crushed it. Light of protection, protect me. Boom! Inside the token, a ball of terrifying formation Dao light erupted and actually blocked the attacks of Yi Fei and the other 3 simultaneously. As a genius who had been sealed since ancient times, the Black Hell Saint Sun suddenly thought of something and shouted, I know who you are. You are the descendant of the Guardians. At least you know what's good for you. Since you know my identity, you should know that the Earth Formation Sex Test was originally prepared for us, the descendants of the Protectors. The treasures inside should belong to the Protectors clan. They should belong to me, Pajun. The bronze spear of the Army of Destruction shone with dazzling light. However, facing the encirclement of the 4 peerless geniuses, the Army of Destruction did not dare to act rashly. Instead, he suddenly suggested, if we continue to fight here, no one will be able to enter the light door. Why don't we enter together and then compete for the treasures based on our strength? What do you think? It will also prevent some people from taking advantage of this loophole. This some people that the Army of Destruction was referring to were the top geniuses like Dongfang Yu. Just now, when Yi Fei and the others were fighting intensely, they almost rushed in. However, Dongfang Yu and the others were stopped in the end. Yi Fei could only cast a sympathetic look at Dongfang Yu. However, when all the peerless geniuses agreed with the Army of Destruction suggestion, he could only nod. Although Dongfang Yu and the others were depressed, they were not dissatisfied. After all, their strength was not comparable to the peerless geniuses. If they were lucky enough to enter, that would be their luck. If they were not, then there was nothing to be disappointed about. All right, Yi Fei, it seems like there is nothing for us to do here. Let's not go in. We will just hunt these wild beasts outside. Sai, we are so unlucky. If we had known, we would have waited for them to fight more intensely before sneaking in. Dongfang Yu, it's all your fault for being too impatient. Sure, Zhongtian, you were the one who suggested the plan to fish in troubled waters. Yi Fei's face darkened when he heard the four of them complaining about each other even after they left. He then looked at the other four and realized that they all had a tacit understanding with each other. They immediately stopped fighting. The five of them stopped fighting at the same time. They lined up in a row and rushed into the door of light not far away. Chapter 1596. Unfortunately, no one pitted Huashao. On the path of martial arts, there was no turning back. Similarly, it was the same when it came to fighting for treasures. One less person meant one less competitor. Boom. Following which, the five of them entered at the same time. The light door shook, and Yi Fei walked into a wider space. There was nothing in this space. It was empty all around. In the middle of the empty space, there was a stone staircase that was half a meter tall. On the staircase, there was a hazy realm. There was a porcelain bottle that contained the martial god's blood essence. Even though it was sealed in the bottle, Yi Fei could still feel the power of the martial god's blood essence. However, his gaze was still on the hazy realm. I must get this realm. That drop of martial god's blood essence is mine. Whoever tries to snatch it from me will be the enemy of the army of destruction. The army of destruction held the bronze spear and started to walk faster. However, Di Fan was even faster. He lifted his leg and appeared in front of everyone. These two items belong to me, Di Fan. Boom! Di Fan's sage purple chi exploded and formed a terrifying shockwave that surged in all directions. He tried to push Yi Fei and the rest away so that he could snatch the two treasures. Di Fan's actions had infuriated the Black Hell Saint. Yi Fei, what are you waiting for? If we don't work together now, none of us will have chance. The Black Hell Saint shouted. That's the only way. I must get this heaven realm. Yi Fei didn't think too much about it, and immediately stood beside the Black Hell Saint. Although they had grudges, they had cooperated well in the second round of the assessment. At the same time, the army of destruction also stood together with Shuiyu. Then, the four of them looked at each other and suddenly rushed towards Di Fan. Obviously, Di Fan was the most powerful and talented here. With Di Fan's identity as an innate sage, Di Fan would only need time. Among the exceptional geniuses present, he was the one with the highest chance of becoming a monster. If Yi Fei wanted to get the treasure, he would have to team up with the others and get rid of Di Fan first. Faced with the sudden attack from the four of them, Di Fan let out a furious roar. However, just like the army of destruction, even though he was an innate saint, Di Fan's face flashed with fear and anger when facing the attacks of four peerless geniuses at the same time. However, his performance just now was too strong, and he had already alerted everyone. Even if Di Fan wanted to find an alliance, he couldn't find one. Friends. After that, a purple flame burned on Di Fan's body, causing his attack and defense to reach the perfect state of a saint. You forced me to do this. Don't blame me if you die. Fist of the War God. Purple chi filled the air as Di Fan's entire body burned with purple flames. At this moment, he had transformed into a terrifying battle saint. His divine fists shattered the void as his anger shook the heavens and earth. Boom! Di Fan's divine fists collided with Shuiyu's heavenly blade. Under Shuiyu's horrified gaze, his heavenly blade was smashed into pieces. Shuiyu spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated frantically. Boom! Di Fan's second divine fist collided with the army of destruction's bronze spear at the same time. The incomparably violent purple divine fist smashed a terrifying crack on the army of destruction's spearhead. The army of destruction was also sent flying by Di Fan's punch while vomiting blood. However, this didn't scare Yi Fei. While Di Fan's attack was about to end, Yi Fei also rushed towards Di Fan. This immediately enraged Di Fan. He was like a furious saint as he suddenly kicked out. That kick caused the void to explode as he wanted to kick Yi Fei away. However, The heavy black sword in Yi Fei's hand was already whistling as it smashed towards Di Fan's divine leg. Clang! At the moment when the black sword collided with the divine leg, Di Fan's purple chi suddenly turned into a mysterious armor and condensed on his thigh. It actually blocked the enormous power of the black sword. At the same time, Yi Fei also felt a huge rebounding force that wanted to push him back. No, I can't retreat. Once Di Fan breaks through the defensive line, I will never have the chance to obtain the martial god's treasure. I don't care if you're a saint or not. I will just smash you. Yi Fei roared angrily. As he smashed out his black sword, the blood sword in his right hand emitted a dazzling sword light. Within the sword light, there was the roar of the azure dragon, the roar of the white tiger, the cry of the vermilion bird, and the groan of the black tortoise. The Tai Chi Four Phases sword emitted a dazzling radiance as the four swords slashed towards the opponent. The violent sword aura also caused Di Fan's face to turn serious. Then, two blurry domains suddenly appeared on Di Fan's body. Those were two powerful earth-gray domains. At this moment, Di Fan was holding them in his hands to strengthen his fist of the war god. Suddenly, a terrifying purple fist radiance appeared in the sky in front of Yi Fei. Yi Fei's eyes flashed with shock. Only now did he know why Di Fan was respected as the white-clothed war god. This person was actually hiding two earth-gray domains. Moreover, the attacks of these two earth-gray domains were extremely powerful. They were actually able to block the double attack of his black sword and blood sword. However, as Di Fan was forced out of his domain, the Black Hell Saint, who had been hiding in the dark, finally seized this opportunity. Without any sound, a gloomy shadow quickly appeared behind Di Fan. Suddenly, an extremely miserable aura of death appeared in the surrounding space. God slaying, the Black Hell Saint said in a low voice. He was obviously using a secret killing technique that Yi Fei had never seen before. His figure flickered like a ghost as he pierced through the void. The spear radiance turned into a black afterimage. It actually caused countless cracks to appear on Di Fan's purple divine armor. You are courting death, fury of the war god. Boom! Di Fan suddenly roared. The armor that was about to shatter suddenly became firm again. At the same time, Di Fan's strength suddenly doubled. He entered a berserk state. Then, he turned around and punched the Black Hell Saint. Wah! The Black Hell Saint screamed. His entire chest was hit by Di Fan's punch. He was once again heavily injured. However, Di Fan's aura had also weakened after using this move. He no longer dared to continue fighting with Yi Fei. Instead, he angrily retreated. He immediately took out a large amount of elixirs, wanting to recover from his injuries as soon as possible. Following that, the Black Hell Saint was heavily injured. Di Fan had used up a lot of energy and temporarily retreated from the battle. Only Yi Fei, Shui Yu, and the Army of Destruction were left. Chapter 1597. Yi Fei rolled his eyes. Without waiting for Shui Yu and the Army of Destruction to join forces, he suddenly shouted at Di Fan, who had retreated to the back. Di Fan, I know that you still have the strength to fight. Why don't we join forces and get rid of them first? Then we'll have the final battle. Without waiting for Di Fan's agreement, the moment Shui Yu charged over, Yi Fei had already torn through the void and appeared in front of Di Fan. It seemed like Yi Fei had retreated and given up the opportunity to fight for the treasure. However, Shui Yu and the Army of Destruction weren't completely united. Once Yi Fei retreated, the remaining two would either have internal conflicts or internal conflicts. Otherwise, they would continue to join forces and chase after Yi Fei and Di Fan to face their combined attacks. Everyone present was smart. Naturally, they could see Yi Fei's sinister intentions. Shui Yu and the Army of Destruction were instantly disgusted. However, since Yi Fei and Di Fan still had the strength to fight, they didn't dare to fight among themselves, let alone rush to the altar to fight for the martial god's treasure. They would leave their backs open to the enemy. The only thing that the two of them could do now was to suppress their disgust and beat Yi Fei and Di Fan until they completely lost the ability to fight. Then they would fight among themselves. Therefore, when Yi Fei retreated, they had no choice but to suppress their anger and continue to join forces to chase after Yi Fei, even though they knew that this was the best opportunity to fight for the treasure. Due to his anger towards Yi Fei, Shuiyu broke through the limits of his Saber Dao and used the Saber Dao that he hadn't mastered yet. He hadn't mastered the primordial heaven art yet. Sky Cross Slash. The saber light swept across the sky and tore the earth apart. With the appearance of Shuiyu, two overlapping rays of light appeared in the void. At the same time, Shuiyu's combat strength increased exponentially. Killed a level 8 sky dragon. Yi Fei did not back down. When Shuiyu attacked, he also activated his primordial sky technique. The 8 heavenly dragons broke through the void and formed 8 strange doors with Yi Fei at the center. Each door had a powerful heavenly dragon guarding it. When the 8 heavenly dragons gathered, the entire void was suppressed and solidified. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 8 heavenly dragons spat out golden suns at the same time. The blood dragon suppressed hell, the ice dragon guarded the frigid water, and the azure dragon suppressed the heavenly court. The 3 heavenly dragons seemed to be resonating with each other from afar. They seemed to contain some sort of natural law as they collided with Shuiyu's cross slash. During the battle, Yi Fei did not ask for Di Fan's opinion. He also did not care if Di Fan would join forces with him. However, he believed that Di Fan was a smart person and would definitely make the wisest choice. Di Fan's expression changed drastically. This Yi Fei is really cunning. He actually used me, a sage, as a tool. However, what he said makes sense. If Yi Fei loses, I will have to face the attacks of 2 people. If the Black Hell Saint takes the opportunity to recover, I will have to face the attacks of 3 people. Since the Black Hell Saint is still recovering, I will deal with Shuiyu and the Army of Destruction first. Then, I will battle with Yi Fei, War God's Fury. Boom! Di Fan's originally weak body was replenished by a large number of pills. He regained his battle strength without hesitation. Just as Yi Fei blocked Shuiyu, Di Fan roared and transformed into a purple war god once again, charging towards the Army of Destruction. Yi Fei, the Army of Destruction will remember you. The Army of Destruction roared angrily. He was really disgusted by Yi Fei's dirty tricks. However, facing Di Fan's powerful attacks, he no longer dared to support Shuiyu and attack Yi Fei. He could only let his bronze spear explode with the brightest light to block Di Fan's terrifying War God's fury. War God Catalog. Di Fan had no intention of tangling with the Army of Destruction. The moment he charged towards the Army of Destruction, he had already unleashed his strongest battle strength. As an innate saint, and the Di family itself was a branch of the War God, Di Fan's attacks were undoubtedly the most terrifying among the group. His purple God Fist only struck out 3 times, and it had already bent the Army of Destruction's bronze spear. The sound of metal being bent could be heard. However, as the descendant of the Guardians, the Army of Destruction was also very powerful. Although he was no match for Di Fan, he still had the spirit of facing death. He unleashed all of his strength, together with his earth-level domain, crazily piercing towards the front. Roar! On the other side, the battle between Yi Fei and Shuiyu had also reached its climax. Shuiyu's entire body had turned into an invisible blade. Every move he made was accompanied by the sound of blade energy. In the sky, the flashing cross slash cut the void into pieces of horrifying tofu. In the middle of these pieces of tofu, 8 heavenly dragons roared crazily. Yi Fei was as still as a mountain. He raised the black sword in his hand and slashed forward in a frenzy. The space in the array formation started to shake violently. The golden light was like the scorching sun. It made Yi Fei look like a god, dazzling and dazzling. Up. Behind him were 8 heavenly dragons, guarding 8 mysterious doors. In front of him was the starlight emitted by the black sword. These sword lights eventually formed a mountain, a forest, and an ocean of swords and stars. Impossible. He has just transformed into an exceptional genius. How can he have 4 king-level domains? Shui was so angry that he vomited blood. He suddenly regretted that he had only cultivated 1 Earth-level domain. Although it was an Earth-level domain, it was completely suppressed by the weight of the Black Sword. Although he still had the semi-god weapon called Iron Blade in his hand, he was equally matched with Yi Fei's Blood Sword. After much difficulty, Shui finally made up his mind. He didn't hesitate to reveal the immemorial heaven technique he had learned. Yi Fei immediately revealed an even stronger immemorial heaven technique. It was a terrifying immemorial heaven technique with 4 king-level domains. It collided with his cross-slash. How could he continue fighting like this? His domain was suppressed, his semi-god weapon was suppressed, and now even his immemorial heaven technique was suppressed. Shui was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Even an exceptional genius like him felt like he was going to explode if he was born in Yi Fei's place. Why was he born in Shui Yu's place? Boom! Both parties collided fiercely again. This time, Yi Fei's Black Sword completely gained the upper hand. Yi Fei immediately seized this rare opportunity to kill Shui Yu in one go. At this moment, Shui Yu also instantly felt the killing intent emitted by Yi Fei. Shui Yu's eyes suddenly turned red. He was filled with endless anger and frustration. He roared, "If I can't have it, you won't have it either." Kill! Sky explosion. Boom! A shocking explosion suddenly sounded in the sky. Shui Yu actually used the Blade God Valley's forbidden technique. Similarly, this was a terrifying technique that would cause one to perish together with the enemy. Shui Yu used a secret technique and threw the cold iron blade in his hand towards the sky. The king-level domain exploded. Boom! Affected by the explosion of the cold iron blade, the great formation in the sky instantly shattered. Boundless void energy surged in from all directions. It was like a huge black beast with its mouth wide open. The void energy was even more terrifying than a heaven-grade quasi-emperor's. How could this be? Shui Yu was scared silly. His original intention was to destroy the treasure on the stairs and humiliate everyone present. How could he have known that there would be a martial god's restriction on the stairs? At this moment, he even activated it to attack them. Chapter 1598. Shui Yu, that idiot. Not only did he destroy my heaven-level domain, he even destroyed one of my semi-divine weapons. Yi Fei looked at the semi-divine weapon that was swallowed by the void and exploded. His heart was bleeding, but he wasn't the only one who was bleeding. The holy son of Black Prison's God-slaying blade was also destroyed. The army of destruction's bronze spear was also destroyed. Fan was even forced to take out an ancient broken weapon and throw it into the void. Only then did he manage to slightly stop the void beast formed by the Einherjar seal from devouring the void. At this moment, Fan was so angry that he wanted to find Shui Yu and fight him to the death. One must know that the ancient broken weapon was the keepsake of his ancestor. Unfortunately, even with this keepsake and the self-destruction of Yi Fei and the other two's semi-divine weapons, they still couldn't completely destroy the void beast. Yi Fei and the other 3 immediately stared at Shui Yu with red eyes. Shui Yu's face was even paler, but he also knew that he had indeed caused a huge disaster due to his rashness. If we can't stop the Einherjar seal, we will all die. Scram, do I need you to tell me that? 8 extreme heavenly dragons explode. Yi Fei's eyes were red. Suddenly, 8 heavenly dragons flew out from behind him. These heavenly dragons all rushed forward and self-destructed together with the domain. I don't want to die. We must stop it. Shui Yu's hair was already disheveled. He no longer had the elegance of the small knife god. He was in a state of madness. Under the stimulation of life and death, his sky cross/slash actually increased from double to triple. This shocked Fan and the others. They were all shocked. But at this moment of life and death, No one dared to have any other thoughts. Difan's purple aura surged. Suddenly, 3 sages walked out from the clouds above his head. They actually walked together to the front and self-destructed. Subsequently, the Black Hell Saint and the descendants of the Guardians, the army of destruction, did not dare to hold back. They all launched their strongest attacks towards the mouth of the black giant beast. Everyone's joint actions finally reduced the size of the giant beast. However, even though the combined attacks of the 5 supreme geniuses had prevented the black beast from fully forming, the explosions of the quasi-god items and the primeval heavenly art caused space to distort, and the spell formation and space to shatter. Following this, the tremendous pressure of the martial god forbidding aura crushed downward like a terrifying heavens and earth. Even the peerless geniuses had no chance against such a force. Yi Fei immediately felt as if his entire chest was being squeezed and deformed by this terrifying pressure. In particular, the strange pulling force of the martial god restriction suddenly caused Yi Fei's body to blow up like a balloon. He swelled up and turned into a huge fatty in an instant. If not for the fact that Yi Fei's physical body had already reached major completion, just this pressure alone would have caused his body to explode, and he would have died a violent death. Then, he looked at the others and realized that Difan's body was being twisted and elongated like noodles. He had turned from a white-clothed war god into a white-clothed noodle. The bronze armor of the army of destruction had already been shattered into pieces. His body had also started to collapse and become a big fatty. His skin had also started to crack. It was obvious that the army of destruction was no match for him in terms of physical strength. The Black Hell Saint was the most miserable one. He was not good at fighting head-on. First, he was severely injured by Difan. Now, he was being twisted and distorted by the enormous pressure of the martial god restriction. This caused the Black Hell Saint's body to be twisted and elongated like a shadow, as if it would break at any time. The unluckiest one was Shui Yu, as he was the closest to the martial god's forbidding aura. Thus, he was under the greatest pressure. His bodily fluids, blood, and urine were all squeezed out of his body like a sponge. If he had not achieved the martial dominator realm, he would not have been able to withstand the pressure. Shui Yu would have died on the spot. Boom! As Yi Fei and the others thought they would be dragged to their deaths by the force of the martial god's forbidding aura due to Shui Yu's impulsive actions, the martial god's forbidding aura suddenly stopped moving, as the suffocating pressure swiftly vanished. Yi Fei and the others' bodies quickly returned to normal. However, all of them had lost their ability to fight. They could only lie on the ground, struggling to catch their breath. Shui Yu was so angry that he kept vomiting blood. However, no matter how badly he was injured, everyone's eyes were still fixed on the stairs not far away. They saw that everything in the sky had been destroyed by the pressure of the martial god restriction. Only the heaven rank realm on the stairs and the porcelain bottle containing the martial god's blood essence were still intact. Suddenly, Yi Fei's eyes lit up. Even though he was separated by the porcelain bottle, he could feel the strong vitality of the martial god's blood essence. Yi Fei immediately tried to communicate with the undying sword soul to heal his injuries. However, he soon felt a sharp pain in his nerves. Not only had the pressure damaged his primordial spirit, it had also damaged his consciousness. Not only had he lost all his strength, he could not even move now, let alone stand up and fight. The thought and the pain made Yi Fei want to scream. In this state, he could not awaken the undying sword soul. However, Difan and the others were in the same situation as him. In other words, everyone had become ordinary people without any strength. If they wanted to obtain the treasures above, it was not a competition of combat strength, but of willpower. Whoever had the strongest willpower and could endure the pain and approach the stairs first would have the last chance to obtain the treasures above. I must get that heaven rank realm. A crazed look flashed in Yi Fei's eyes. He resisted the urge and tried to grab the black sword to stand up, but the black sword was too heavy. Not to mention grabbing it. Even moving a finger was extremely difficult. Yi Fei decisively gave up on the black sword. He swayed as he endured the pain and stood up. After all, his physical body was strong. With his willpower and physical body, he could still stand. Then, Yi Fei staggered as he rushed towards the stone platform. Suddenly, a pair of hands grabbed onto Yi Fei's legs tightly. Shuiyu fell to the ground. She did not even have the strength to stand up. However, she still glared at Yi Fei and said angrily, "Don't even think about it. I can give that treasure to anyone but you. Shuiyu, you're asking for it." Seeing that Shuiyu was causing trouble again, Yi Fei was furious. He suddenly used his other leg to step on Shuiyu's face. "Are you letting go or not?" Chapter 1599. Yi Fei was shocked. Without thinking, he pounced on Di Fan and hugged him tightly. He even pressed Di Fan to the ground. Di Fan's furious roar could be heard from below. "Yi Fei, you're courting death." Di Fan's face was pale, and his eyes were bloodshot. As a natural saint, Di Fan was noble and inviolable no matter where he went. His name was Di Fan, and he was a venerable emperor. Di Fan had never imagined that he would be in such a sorry state. Not only did he lose all his battle power, he was also pressed to the ground by Yi Fei. However, the martial god's forbidding aura was simply too terrifying. Even though the forbidding aura had stopped midway due to some unknown reason, the power that it had unleashed had still seriously injured Yi Fei and the others. In a short period of time, they had lost all their strength, turning into mere mortals. Of course, Yi Fei and Di Fan were still in a better state. At least they could still walk. As for the Black Hell Saint, who was the most severely injured, he didn't even have the strength to move. The Army of Destruction's condition was slightly better, but he could only lie on the ground and gasp for breath. When the Army of Destruction saw that Yi Fei and Di Fan could still stand up and walk despite the martial god's pressure, he was already in despair. He thought that he had no fate with the martial god's treasure, until he saw Yi Fei being held back by Shuiyu and Yi Fei pressing Di Fan down. At this moment, the despair in the eyes of the Army of Destruction was suddenly ignited with a strong sense of hope. He didn't have the strength to stand up, but he actually crawled up from the ground and slowly climbed toward the stairs not far away. Yi Fei and Di Fan were instantly enraged. Di Fan roared, "Yi Fei, let me go. Let's work together and defeat the Army of Destruction first." Yi Fei also scolded angrily, "Army of Destruction, do you have any sense of shame? As a peerless genius, you're actually crawling on the ground. Di Fan, let's go and deal with the Army of Destruction together." Although that was what they said, Yi Fei and Di Fan still held onto each other's collars. Neither of them had any intention of letting go. Obviously, they were afraid that if they let go of the other party would take the opportunity to run ahead. A look of disdain flashed in the eyes of the Army of Destruction. He laughed loudly and said, "Bullshit shame. Even Shui, you can piss in your pants. So what if I crawl on the ground? As long as I can obtain the martial god's treasure, my Army of Destruction will be glorious. We will trample all of you under our feet." Army of Destruction, shut up. Shui was suddenly enraged. Being suppressed by the war god's restriction was undoubtedly the most humiliating experience he had ever had. The Army of Destruction actually dared to bring up his scars? Considering that Shui still had to restrain Yi Fei, the Army of Destruction decisively stopped mocking. He only stared at the direction of the stone platform excitedly and laughed coldly. "The martial god's treasure finally belongs to me. As long as I can obtain these two treasures, I, the Army of Destruction, will accept it even if I have to turn into a turtle, let alone crawling on the ground." As he spoke, he realized that his hands were gradually losing strength. The Army of Destruction actually knocked his chin on the ground again and inched forward bit by bit. Although it wasn't much, he was still only one step away from the stone platform. It had to be said that the Army of Destruction was really a ruthless person. Not only was he ruthless to his enemies, he was even more ruthless to himself. The Black Hell Saint's son and Shui Yu's expressions became extremely ugly. Their eyes were filled with anger and extreme unwillingness. Fan roared angrily. As an innate saint, if he could obtain the martial god's blood essence, it was extremely possible for him to transform from a peerless genius to an even stronger peerless genius. But now, he could only watch as the army of destruction slowly took away the glory that should have belonged to him. Hearing the army of destruction's words, a strange expression appeared on Yi Fei's face. Just now, what did the army of destruction say? He would rather turn into a turtle and crawl over there. I don't have the courage and opportunity of the army of destruction, but I happen to have the dragon turtle with me. If he had the strength, Yi Fei really wanted to slap himself. He was so anxious that he almost forgot that he still had his greatest trump card. Immediately, Yi Fei's consciousness sank into the beast-marked space. When he saw that Xiao Qiao and the dragon turtle were not affected by the martial god's restriction, Yi Fei became extremely excited. Dragon turtle, come out. Quickly throw me over there. Roar. The dragon turtle knew that it did not perform well last time, so it worked very hard this time. As soon as Yi Fei spoke, the dragon turtle had already rushed out of the beast-marked space eagerly. It immediately used its dragon claws to slap away Shui Yu and Fan. At the same time, it ferociously kicked Yi Fei. Then Yi Fei felt that his body could fly again. He even directly flew over the crawling army of destruction under the extremely shocked gaze of the army of destruction. With a boom, Yi Fei instantly landed on the stone platform. His two hands grabbed the heaven-level domain and the porcelain bottle that contained the martial god's blood essence before the army of destruction could. The army of destruction widened his eyes. He could not believe that Yi Fei had actually snatched the martial god's treasure before him, when he had abandoned his dignity and hardened his heart to climb to the stone platform. Intense anger surged into the army of destruction's mind. Immediately, he fainted from anger. Pooh! Pooh! The Black Hell Saint and Shui Yu were so angry that they could not help but vomit blood. Fan did not vomit blood, but his gaze towards the dragon turtle was filled with a shocking murderous intent. The dragon turtle also instantly felt the murderous intent. It knew that it could not afford to offend these exceptional geniuses who had broken through to the martial emperor realm. The dragon turtle wisely tucked its tail and instantly returned to Yi Fei's side. It crawled back into the beast-marked space at the fastest speed possible. Fan, the Black Hell Saint, and Shui Yu's terrifying, murderous, and furious gazes landed on Yi Fei at the same time. Yi Fei, shameless, put down the martial god's treasure and hand over that damn turtle. Dragon turtle, our army of destruction wants to eat that dragon turtle alive. On the stone platform, the army of destruction slowly regained consciousness. Instantly, a huge wave of anger filled his body. Yi Fei also felt inexplicably guilty. He knew that his act of releasing the dragon turtle had completely offended these four exceptional geniuses. However, you can't blame me for this. It's my ability to release the dragon turtle. Yi Fei shook his head. He knew that this grudge was set. Without saying anything else, Yi Fei unscrewed the lid and swallowed the martial god's blood essence in the porcelain bottle in front of the four geniuses. Yi Fei, Fan did not know where he got the strength from. His intense anger actually helped him, an innate saint, recover from his weakened state. Chapter 1600. Boom! The instant the heavenly dragon devour domain appeared, mysterious images appeared in Yi Fei's mind. Those images formed runes that evolved into different forms of heavenly domains. Yi Fei was pleasantly surprised to find that the formation spirit hadn't lied to him. This domain was a heavenly domain. This domain could really transform into any type of domain according to his will. What domain should I transform into now? There are 8 types of domain in the 8 trigrams. The lightning domain is the strongest and the hardest to cultivate. That's right, I want to transform this heavenly domain into a lightning domain. Roar! Following Yi Fei's will, the heavenly dragon that devoured the domain suddenly turned into a terrifying lightning dragon. Boundless lightning appeared behind Yi Fei. It was like a world of lightning that blasted out in all directions. The expressions of Di Fan and the others immediately changed. They did not expect Yi Fei to be able to complete the absorption of the heavenly domain so quickly. Of course, this was also due to the mystical nature of the heavenly venerate cultivation technique, the heavenly dragon. As long as one condensed a domain and was devoured by the heavenly dragon, that heavenly dragon would immediately merge into a special type of heavenly venerate cultivation technique. The symbols of the 8 trigrams. Yi Fei already knew all the symbols of the 8 trigrams. Hence, he did not need to comprehend this cultivation technique. As long as he had the domain and the corresponding symbols, he could instantly cultivate the lightning dragon's attribute. Boom! The benefits that Yi Fei obtained were not limited to this. As the heavenly dragon devoured the domain, the drop of martial god's blood essence instantly merged with his body, forming a terrifying energy that continuously shattered his martial path barriers. This also allowed Yi Fei's strength to jump from the initial stage of martial monarch to the initial stage in the blink of an eye. Mid-stage martial monarch, late-stage martial monarch, peak martial monarch. The strength of the martial god's blood essence was not limited to this. After reaching the peak of martial monarch, Yi Fei suddenly felt a rumbling in his body. His body suddenly emitted a powerful emperor's might. This emperor's might allowed Yi Fei to reach the initial stage of quasi-emperor in an instant. At the same time, it also opened all the seals in Yi Fei's domain. Roar! Suddenly, a terrifying 3-faced and 6-armed demon god appeared behind Yi Fei. It emitted emperor's might and stood behind him. Di Fan and the other 3 who had rushed up to him were all sent flying, vomiting blood. That drop of the martial god's blood essence actually allowed him to break through the quasi-emperor level in an instant. Di Fan's tone was filled with shock, and he felt an inexplicable sourness in his heart. It's not as simple as being a quasi-emperor. That drop of martial god's blood essence also broke the shackles of his human body. Although he's not a demon, he's able to possess a martial emperor's heavenly domain at the quasi-emperor realm. This should belong to the guardians. Defeating armies clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. He was so angry that 2 plumes of black smoke came out of his nostrils. Damn it! How can he have so many heaven domains? Shui suddenly noticed that Yi Fei's domains were not normal. It was one thing for Yi Fei to fuse with the heaven-grade lightning domain, but now another heaven-grade blood demon domain had appeared behind him. Before Shui could recover from his jealousy, another heaven-grade ice domain appeared on Yi Fei's body. Seeing that domain, the Black Jail Saint was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He instantly recognized that ice domain. It was specially prepared by the Black Jail Master for him after he had awakened from the ancient times. In the end, it had benefited Yi Fei. At this point, other than the Azure Dragon domain and the Tai Chi domain that Yi Fei had cultivated, all of his other domains had reached the heaven grade under the stimulation of the martial god's blood essence. What was even more exaggerated was that Yi Fei was still in the early quasi-emperor realm, which was one realm higher than all of the peerless geniuses present. Heaven grade, quasi-emperor. He actually became a heaven grade, quasi-emperor. Di Fan was a little dazed. As a natural saint, he had always been proud. Even if he was surrounded by all of the peerless geniuses, Di Fan would not blink an eye. He would face them calmly and treat them all as his stepping stones to break through to the martial emperor realm. Sure. However, at this moment, Di Fan could no longer remain calm. After all, even as a peerless genius, he could only contend against an Earth-grade quasi-emperor. When faced with a heaven-grade quasi-emperor, he could only run away. What made Di Fan extremely unhappy was that Yi Fei was not an ordinary heaven-grade quasi-emperor, but a super freak who possessed 3 heaven-grade domains. Even though he was a natural saint, Di Fan's gaze towards Yi Fei was now filled with fear. However, after the fear, Fan's body suddenly emitted a surge of battle intent. It was the battle intent of heaven. So what if you're a heaven-grade quasi-emperor? I, Fan, am a natural saint. My goal is to become a martial emperor, martial god, Fei. You may be able to suppress me temporarily, but soon I will catch up and surpass you. I will make you despair. Vast and mighty purple chi, a saint walking alone. Fan was filled with battle intent, but also with a trace of disappointment and depression. He was the first to turn and leave this space. The army of destruction looked at Fan's figure with a complicated expression. When he saw that Fei was still breaking through, the army of destruction felt extremely sullen and wronged. Damn it! If it wasn't for Fei being too shameless, and that tortoise being too shameless, the army of destruction would be the one to obtain the martial god's blood essence and become a heaven-grade quasi-emperor. Fei, just you wait. Sooner or later, there will be a day. My army of destruction will defeat you and then eat that tortoise alive. After looking at Fei with hatred, the army of destruction suppressed his anger and grievance and turned to leave this space. Before he left, he deliberately looked at the Black Hell Saint. He saw that this ancient awakened genius body was trembling, as if he was suppressing the anger and killing intent in his heart. The Black Hell Saint had enough reason to be angry. Not to mention the grudges between Fei and the Black Hell, just the fact that Fei had snatched away the ice domain that originally belonged to him, and even broke through to such an abnormal level. The heaven-grade quasi-emperor, the Black Hell Saint, almost exploded in anger. Fei, even if you break through to become a martial emperor or martial god, you're still someone that the Black Hell and I, the Black Hell Saint, must kill. As he spoke, the Black Hell Saint stared coldly at Shuiyu, who was not far away. At this moment, Shuiyu's eyes were already in a daze, as if she was shocked by Fei's sudden increase in strength. The Black Hell Saint was confident that if he suddenly attacked now, he would definitely be able to assassinate Shuiyu, a peerless genius. However, after considering the possibility that this would cause the martial god to be unhappy, the Black Hell Saint still walked out gloomily. As the Black Hell Saint walked out, Shuiyu's dazed eyes suddenly lit up. She looked at Fei with a complicated expression. On one hand, she hated Fei and couldn't wait to strangle Fei 100 times. On the other hand, she was afraid of Fei's current realm. 3 heaven-grade quasi-emperors were enough to beat a peerless genius to the ground. However, Shuiyu had the deepest grudges with Fei. She also went against Fei the most. Therefore, when she saw Fei breaking through, Shuiyu was a little afraid. She wanted to resolve the grudges with Fei, but she was afraid that the other geniuses would laugh at her. Thus, she pretended to be in a daze and waited for the others. Chapter 16:01. Blood chi surged as Fei continued to break through. He was consolidating his cultivation level and using his undying sword soul to digest the remaining drop of martial god's blood essence. The power of the martial god's blood was far greater than what Fan and the others had seen. This drop of blood not only raised Fei's cultivation level from martial emperor to Tian realm quasi-emperor in an instant, but its remaining power also allowed Fei's consciousness to enter a special bloodline space. In this space, Fei saw a majestic divine coffin. However, upon closer inspection, it was not a divine coffin, but a special object formed by countless formations. Inside the coffin, Fei even saw the body of a real martial god. His heart skipped a beat. He had seen Dijinzi's illusionary figure before. Thus, he immediately recognized the martial god lying inside the coffin to be Dijinzi himself. This is... Fei looked at the divine body and hesitated. Dijinzi's divine body suddenly emitted a majestic divine light. A blurry figure gradually walked out of the divine coffin formed purely by formations and gradually became clear. As you can see, this is my tomb. Senior Dijinzi, you are really dead. Sister Formation Fairy, is also dead? Why? The ancient martial gods were so powerful, and your formation sect was so powerful. You could even kill heavenly venerables and earthly venerables. Why did you die? Is the sorcerer tribe so terrifying? Yi Fei could not understand. He had experienced it before. He had seen Shang Jiu's life in his memories. Although the sorcerer tribe was strange, they were still made of flesh and blood. They had joy and sorrow and were not much different from humans. Similarly, although sorcerer arts were strange, once a martial artist reached the martial god realm, he could also control the rules of heaven and earth. His combat ability was comparable to a grand sorcerer. He could not imagine how the formation sect, which was able to open up the ancient road to the starry sky, could be defeated. Di Jinzi said in surprise, "My sister even told you this?" "That's right. My array faction can indeed kill heaven and earth supremes. However, this is only based on theory. Do you know that to kill an earthly supremacy, we need at least 100,000 spiritual veins? To kill a heavenly supremacy, we need at least 1,000,000 spiritual veins. It will be difficult for the Zulong continent to gather so many spiritual veins. In the end, our array sect is just daydreaming. This is also the reason why we split up. Other than my younger sister, we're all too crazy. While formations can allow one to become a god, compared to the martial path, the Tao of formations is just the martial path. It's a very narrow branch." At this point, Di Zongzi's expression suddenly turned serious. He said in a deep voice, "Besides, the sorcerer tribe is not our enemy. They are only accomplices." Behind the sorcerer tribe, there is an even more powerful enemy who is trying to destroy our Zulong continent. Of course, the reason for the martial gods' fear and despair is not something that the current you can understand. I brought you here because I have something to ask of you. Senior, please tell me what you need. Yi Fei was very straightforward. After all, it was all thanks to the help of the Earth Array sect that he was able to break through to the martial emperor realm. Otherwise, with his identity as a person who had been abandoned by the heavens, he would have been killed by the heavens. It could be said that Di Zongzi had saved his life. This was a very heavy debt of gratitude. He had to think of a way to repay it. Di Zongzi said solemnly, "Yi Fei, you have to think carefully. This matter is very dangerous. My father is not like me. He is very crazy. In order to research formations that can kill gods, he is willing to do anything. Do you know why the Zulong continent has been declining for generations? The previous one was my father. In order to study the formation, he had used up 70% of the ancestral dragon continent's chi of providence. As a result, the primordial era was 70% weaker than our primordial era. When it came to your generation, it was 90% weaker than the ancient era." After hearing Di Zongzi's words, Yi Fei finally had a rough understanding of the Earth Array sect. In the words of the later generations, the people of the Earth Array sect were a group of crazy scientists. Furthermore, they were the kind that did not hesitate to pay any price for research. This was also why the Zulong continent of the past had become the Tianwu continent of today. Not to mention martial gods. It was impossible for even a martial emperor to appear. This was because 70% of the continent's luck had been wasted by the Earth Array sect. The remaining 30% had been destroyed by the ancient era's great war against the humans and demons. Another 20% had been destroyed during the calamity. The Tianwu continent, which only had 1% of luck left, had become what it was today. Martial emperors could not be produced. Even the strongest demonic geniuses could only cultivate to heaven-rank quasi-emperor. This was undoubtedly something that made all cultivators despair. The source of all this chaos was the Earth Array sect's crazy research. Now, do you know why our Earth Array sect guards this ancient starry heaven's path? It is because we are the sinners of the Zulong continent. In order to atone for our sins, we have to suppress this ancient starry heaven's path for all eternity. We also have to leave behind a final trace of hope for those descendants who have lost all hope in the martial Tao. Now that you have heard this, you are still willing to help me? Earth Array sect said self-deprecatingly. When he was alive, he was very crazy. However, after so many years after his death, he had completely come to terms with it. He had also woken up and regretted it. This ancient starry heavens path was specially built by the Earth Array sect and the ancient era's martial gods to atone for their sins. The first generation of guardians were all disciples of the Earth Array sect. Yi Fei also sighed about this. However, he did not think too much about it. After all, he was not from the ancient era. He could not hate the Earth Array sect. On the contrary, if not for the Earth Array sect's crazy research, if not for Earth Array sect's heaven and Earth Array sect's research, with his identity as a person who had been abandoned by the heavens, he would have died during the martial emperor tribulation. Then he would have been mercilessly killed by the heavenly Tao. How could he be where he was today? Senior, regardless of whether you're sinners or not, I am willing to help you. In my opinion, the Earth Array sect is not a sinner. The real sinner is the martial god who controlled the sorcerer tribe and fought against us. Yi Fei's tone became low. Although Earth Array sect did not say it clearly, Yi Fei knew that only the powerful sorcerer tribe could obey the sorcerer tribe. Only a true martial god would bow his head and obey orders. Otherwise, the Earth Array sect would not be crazy enough to research the Array sect's killing god at all costs. These words stunned Earth Array sect for a moment. Then, he shook his head and said, right is right. Wrong is wrong. Our Earth Array sect was wrong. Our ancient era's martial gods were wrong. We will never deny this. Yi Fei, what I want you to do is very simple, but also very difficult. Do you know what the key my sister gave you is? Is it? Chapter 1602. However, my father is a madman. In order to research formations, he even turned himself into a formation spirit. I don't know if he'll still be willing to help us after 100,000 years have passed. I also don't know how he'll treat you after seeing a special formation material like you. Now, are you still willing to help us? Are you willing to go to the Celestial Formation sect? Di Lianzi stared at Yi Fei with anticipation and a trace of nervousness. Yi Fei's heart turned cold when he heard that this earth formation was describing a living person like him as a material to refine a formation. Di Lianzi's father is not a lunatic. He's simply an inhumane research maniac. In order to study formations, he turned himself into a formation spirit. If I go there, I'll be a lamb in a tiger's den. Yi Fei felt goosebumps all over his body. He immediately changed his words and said, Senior Di Lianzi, I still have something to do. Why don't I go out and think about it for a few days? I'll give you an answer when I've thought it through. I see. Okay, take your time. I have plenty of time. When you've thought it through, you can think about it here. Di Lianzi was very generous. He waved his hand and gave Yi Fei an outline of mountains, rivers, plants, and pavilions. He let Yi Fei live comfortably and think about it slowly. Yi Fei's face immediately darkened. However, in the face of a martial god's threat, there was nothing he could do. In addition to feeling depressed, Yi Fei could only say perfunctorily, Senior, I've thought about it. As the saying goes, if I don't go to hell, who will? Sister Di Lianzi's matter is actually my matter. Very well, then make a heavenly blood oath. Di Lianzi said with a smile. Yi Fei felt as though he could see 100,000 desolate beasts charging in front of him. His face turned even darker. Di Lianzi said, Don't worry, I won't let you go immediately. The spiritual energy of the Key of Destiny is enough to support my sister for 10 years. In 10 years, no matter what you do, you must send it to the Celestial Formation sect and hand it to my father. Of course, I won't let you help for free. The Celestial Formation sect is a place where 70% of the ancestral dragon continent's luck is gathered. It's also the only place in this star area where one can break through to the martial emperor realm. Even if I don't force you, you'll go there sooner or later. Martial Emperor. Yi Fei could not help but widen his eyes. He had to admit that Di Lianzi's words had undoubtedly moved him. No matter what the risk was the fact that the Heavenly Array sect could help people break through to the Martial Emperor realm was enough for him to take the risk and enter. However, he still had to consider the details. After all, Yifei didn't want to go in and be treated as a lab rat. He wanted to be captured and used as a material for the formation. Besides, he had no reason to refuse the martial god's offer. Yifei could only grit his teeth and swear. "All right, I swear that within 10 years, I will find a way to send this key to the Earth Formation sect. At worst, I won't go in myself. I'll refine a corpse puppet or a clone first. If that doesn't work, I can find a scapegoat and trick him into going in." At the same time, Yifei quickly thought of a few good ideas to resolve the danger. Immediately, he calmed down and revealed a simple smile that was unique to honest people. Seeing Yifei swear with his own eyes, Di Lianzi was more or less relieved. When he saw Yifei's simple smile that came from the bottom of his heart, Di Lianzi's heart was infected. He secretly felt ashamed and said, "I, Di Lianzi, am a martial god, but I forced an honest child to do this. I've lost my reputation. Forget it. Forget it. Yifei, don't call me senior in the future. Since my sister has recognized you as her younger brother, from now on, you can call me Big Brother for a while. We met in a hurry, and as her big brother, I don't have much to give you. Take this wooden comb. This is something my mother left me. Take it. Take it to see my father. No matter how cold-hearted he is, he can at least reduce your risk." Di Lianzi waved his hand, and a strange comb flew out from his divine body. It was an ordinary wooden comb. It looked ordinary, but Yifei didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly took it with his fastest speed. After all, this thing could be considered a protective talisman. Then Yifei's face once again revealed the unique, honest, and simple smile of a mountain child. He said happily, "Don't worry, Big Brother Di Lianzi. Leave this matter to me. It's definitely the right choice. Sigh. I hope you can create a miracle and convince that crazy father of mine." Di Lianzi lowered his head and felt even more ashamed. After all, just from Yifei's simple smile, one could feel that Yifei was an honest and simple child. If not for the fact that he had no other choice, Di Lianzi wouldn't threaten such a good child like this. This was also the reason why Di Lianzi was willing to acknowledge Yifei as his younger brother. He felt guilty in his heart. This kind of guilt even made Di Lianzi too embarrassed to continue to face Yifei. Di Lianzi immediately waved his hand and was about to send Yifei out. At the same time, he ordered all the formation spirits of the Earth Formation sect in a deep voice, "From now on, Yifei is my younger brother. You must respect Yifei as well." "Yes, divine decree. Greetings, young master." The million martial Emperor Formation spirits all cupped their hands. Only the burly Formation spirit was meticulous and wasn't affected by Yifei's simple smile. At this time, he was even more heartbroken. He wailed in his heart, "Sect leader, that kid isn't simple at all. He's not simple at all. He looks simple and honest, but he's full of evil. He's all evil." The most hateful thing is that he actually made the sect leader acknowledge him as his younger brother. The burly Formation spirit immediately wanted to warn Di Lianzi not to fall for Yifei's evil tricks. Yifei had noticed long ago that this Formation spirit was different from the other Formation spirits. The other Formation spirits were like Di Lianzi, fanatics about formations. They did not care about anything else. Only this burly Formation spirit seemed to understand the ways of the world. Yifei was immediately enraged. Before the Formation spirit could speak, he quickly shouted, "Big Brother Di Lianzi, please get all the Formation spirits to shut up and listen to me. Speak." Di Lianzi waved his command flag, and all the Formation spirits were rendered speechless. Then, they looked at Yifei strangely. Yifei thought to himself that was close. Then, he looked at the burly Formation spirit with a somewhat vicious look. He did not stand on ceremony and directly demanded, "Big Brother Di Lianzi, I envy you for having so many loyal and devoted Formation spirits. I want one too." When Di Lianzi heard this, he was stunned. He had not expected Yi Fei to be interested in formation spirits. However, when he considered that he had just acknowledged Yi Fei as his younger brother, and that he needed Yi Fei to go to the Heavenly Formation sect and meet the crazy father that he did not even dare to meet, Diu Lianzi could not be too stingy. He could only nod and say, "Sure, you can choose any of these million formation spirits. I can guarantee that they will be loyal to you and will never betray you." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.